Chapter 255. Chu Xiu's strength had already been revealed when he fought with Shen Bai just now. Even Xiahou Wujiang didn't have absolute confidence in fighting with Chu Xiu. Tong Kaitai was just a madman, not a fool. He had the guts to fight with Chu Xiu only because he still had a sliver of a chance to kill Chu Xiu. When Chu Xiu fought with Shen Bai just now, most people only saw Chu Xiu's strength, but they neglected the fact that Chu Xiu had crippled Shen Bai. Naturally, he wasn't unscathed. Tong Kaitai's actions in the Jianghu were so crazy not only because of his strength, but also because of his abnormal perception ability. When it came to talent, Tong Kaitai could only be considered mediocre. However, his perception ability was able to help him escape from the numerous experts of Longhu Mountain's celestial master abode. It could even be said that if he didn't have his perception ability, he would have already been caught by the people of Longhu Mountain in the mountains of West Chu and directly cut into pieces. Moreover, Tong Kaitai's perception ability was also very useful in a fight. He could clearly perceive the opponent's weaknesses and flaws, which could be said to be a great killing weapon in a fight. At this moment, he dared to fight with Chu Xiu because he naturally sensed the injuries and exhaustion in Chu Xiu's body. He might not necessarily have no confidence in this fight. Most importantly, there was still Xiahou Wujiang over there. As long as Xiahou Wujiang dealt with the 3 physical invulnerability realm warriors first, they would be able to defeat Chu Xiu in a 2 versus 1 situation. Being a madman didn't mean that he was stupid. Tong Kaitai only acted crazily, but in reality he was meticulous in a fight. This could also be said to be a kind of talent. As Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel seal descended, Tong Kaitai's hands moved. The demonic energy within his 10 fingers seemed to transform into a large net, directly resisting Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel seal. Although his demonic chi net had been shattered by Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel imprint, he had successfully blocked the explosive power of the great Vajra wheel imprint. Immediately after, an Azura hand descended and powerful demonic chi erupted, directly crushing Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel imprint. The great Vajra wheel seal fell several times in a row, but Tong Kaitai used this method to break it. Chu Xiu furrowed his brows as he tapped his fingers together. In an instant, thunderous explosions rang out and the power of the Buddhist voice was deafening. Chu Xiu displayed his outer lion seal, but Tong Kaitai seemed to have long been prepared for it. All the blood, chi, and demonic energy in his body filled his ears, and he actually used his own inner force and blood to resist Chu Xiu's outer lion seal. Although a trace of blood flowed from his ears under the powerful collision of Chu Xiu's power, his slightly clumsy method successfully blocked Chu Xiu's outer lion seal. In fact, it didn't even affect him in the slightest. After a few moves, Chu Xiu suddenly frowned. He felt that something was wrong. He seemed to have already guessed what Tong Kaitai was planning. He wanted to exhaust himself to death. Although Chu Xiu had only exchanged blows with Tong Kaitai once to probe him, he could faintly sense that Tong Kaitai's martial skills leaned towards the offensive type. Thus, Tong Kaitai would definitely not adopt such a cowardly stance when fighting. And now, Tong Kaitai was spending so much effort to block Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel seal, and even used the stupidest method to block Chu Xiu's outer lion seal. There was only one goal for him to do this, and that was to exhaust Chu Xiu's strength and inner force. Tong Kaitai used this method to fight with Chu Xiu, but in fact, the one who consumed the most energy was himself. But the repercussions from Chu Xiu's previous fight with Shen Bai could not be eliminated so quickly. To completely recover, even with the glazed golden thread goo, it would take a day. So if this continued, the one who would suffer would still be Chu Xiu. Looking at Tong Kaitai, Chu Xiu sneered while fighting, "I didn't expect it. Everyone says that you, Tong Kaitai, act crazily and are no different from a lunatic. But in fact, you are the most cunning one." Tong Kaitai said indifferently, "Killing also requires one's brain. If I really didn't have a brain, I'm afraid I would have been cut into pieces countless times by those cowards in celestial master manner. Chu Xiu, this time, your heart is destined to be mine. I want to dig it open and see what's in your heart." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "You want to drag it out until Xiahou Wujiang comes to help you? That's a good idea, but unfortunately, you chose the wrong target. You overestimate Xiahou Wujiang and underestimate Luo Feiheng and the others. Tong Kaitai was not an idiot. Although he wanted to exhaust Chu Xiu to death, he had no intention of completely dying with Chu Xiu. So, he was still only exhausting Chu Xiu. When Xiahou Wujiang was finished, the two of them would join forces to kill Chu Xiu. Then, they would both get what they needed. But when he looked at Xiahou Wujiang, he couldn't help but call Xiahou Wujiang an idiot in his heart. Tong Kaitai was already able to do his best to stall Chu Xiu, but Xiahou Wujiang dropped the ball at this time. It was simply embarrassing. Even though Xiahou Wujiang had already reached the three-flower realm, he was still being suppressed by Luo Feiheng and the other two in a 3-on-1 battle. The Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique could use mental strength to forcibly control a warrior to fight for them, just like a puppet. But among the three people at present, although Xie Xiaolu's strength and realm were not as good as Xiahou Wujiang's, he had a tenacious mind and could completely rely on his own willpower to resist the imperial spirit technique. And Luo Feiheng was even more so. He had once betrayed his family, although that was in the future. Even Mo Tianlin's mind had become a lot more tenacious after almost being humiliated by Xiahou Wujiang. At this time, he wouldn't fall for it so easily. Under the joint attack of the three people, the effect of the imperial spirit technique was reduced to the extreme. He was still being chased by three physical invulnerability realm warriors. Among them, the most outstanding was Luo Feiheng. Her blood spear red kite was said to have used the blood of several martial arts grandmasters and several kinds of raptors as fuel to refine the embryo. In the end, after the blood spear red kite was formed, it had an extremely strong blood qi. When it attacked, it was extremely violent. The effect of the Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique was directly reduced to the extreme when it came to her. So after the two sides exchanged more than 10 moves, Xiahou Wujiang even began to lose and retreat step by step. Being forced to the extreme by the joint attack of the three, Xiahou Wujiang's eyes revealed a cold light. He didn't use the killer move of the imperial spirit technique just now because he was afraid of hurting Luo Feiheng. But right now, this woman didn't care about his face at all and directly attacked to kill. Then, Xiahou Wujiang didn't need to hold back. If he was really defeated by the three of them together, that would be really embarrassing. Light golden divine light burst out from Xiahou Wujiang's body. This was his gang qi, which wasn't very strong. After all, Xiahou clan's main cultivation was psychic energy. But at this time, Xiahou Wujiang pulled his hands horizontally, and the gang qi in his body seemed to condense into the strings of a zither. His own psychic energy was completely condensed, and he plucked the zither strings. In an instant, there was a violent explosion that resounded through the mind. Imperial Spirit Zither Sound. This was a secret technique of the Xiahou clan's Imperial Spirit technique. With the gang qi as the strings and psychic energy as the hands, it played a soul-calming song and directly attacked the opponent's psychic energy. Only this kind of attack that could be transmitted on the spiritual level could be considered a true primordial spirit secret technique. The three people who bore the brunt of the attack suddenly groaned. The sharp pain that resounded in their heads made it impossible for them to attack again. Among them, Mo Tianlin, who had a slightly weaker cultivation, even spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. But at this time, Luo Feiheng forced herself to continue taking out her blood spear red kite. Regardless of the damage to her body, she poured endless power of qi and blood into the long spear. And when the spear fell, the cry of a phoenix soared to the sky. Spear users had always been the kind of martial artists with majestic martial arts, and it was really rare for a woman like Luo Feiheng to use such a majestic martial arts technique. Moreover, Luo Feiheng didn't hold back at all with this spear. She had been unhappy with Xiahou Wujiang for a long time. Not only did the other party pester her all day long and say those disgusting words, but he also wanted to bewitch the Luo family and let the Luo family form a marriage alliance with the Xiahou clan. This was simply wishful thinking. Therefore, when Luo Feiheng's furious spear fell, a majestic bloody shadow fell across the sky. Xiahou Wujiang pointed out with a finger, and the divine control weapon condensation was invincible. This divine control finger was also a martial art technique in the divine control technique. It used one's own power as a medium to pour spiritual power into it, reaching the level of influencing the other party's mind and even controlling them. But at this time, facing Luo Feiheng's furious spear, Xiahou Wujiang's divine control finger was directly shattered, but at the same time, Luo Feiheng was also attacked by the spiritual power in the divine control finger, and there was a moment of absent-mindedness. But at this time, Xiahou Wujiang wasn't having a good time either. After taking on Luo Feiheng's stunning spear, his arm had already begun to tremble. But in the end, Xiahou Wujiang didn't say anything and just turned to leave. This time, everyone was a little confused. What did Xiahou Wujiang mean by this? Of course, at this time, everyone didn't see that Xiahou Wujiang's internal organs had already been shaken by Luo Feiheng's spear to the point that his blood and qi were boiling. If he didn't leave, he would probably vomit blood on the spot and embarrass himself. But when Xiahou Wujiang left, Tong Kaitai almost vomited blood in anger. He was forcefully resisting Chu Xiu, but in the end, Xiahou Wujiang retreated at this time. How could there be such a scam? Chu Xiu sneered and said, "As I said, you have underestimated Luo Feiheng and the others, and also overestimated Xiahou Wujiang." Chu Xiu didn't have confidence in Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin, and he didn't understand their strength, but he had confidence in Luo Feiheng. For the future Luo Feiheng to have such achievements, one could imagine Luo Feiheng's true strength. "Xiahou Wujiang is leaving, you stay here." Although Chu Xiu had internal injuries, his eyes still revealed a hint of murderous intent. The wisdom fist seal fell with a loud bang, imprisoning the space and rendering heaven and earth useless. Since Tong Kaitai was courting death, he would solve this trouble today. Chapter 256. Xiahou Wujiang's departure had directly trapped Tong Kaitai here. With Chu Xiu's strength, even if he was seriously injured now, Tong Kaitai was not sure that he could defeat Chu Xiu, not to mention that there were still Luo Feiheng and the other two eyeing him covetously. By the time they recovered, he would not be able to escape under the siege of the four. So at this moment, Tong Kaitai directly made a decision: escape. However, under Chu Xiu's wisdom fist seal, the surrounding space was sealed, and his figure seemed to be trapped in a swamp, unable to break free. Chu Xiu's red sleeve blade was unsheathed, and the blood-refined divine aura sprinkled down like a torrential downpour. The sudden burst of power made Tong Kaitai struggle to resist. Fortunately, Chu Xiu wasn't in his peak condition, so his wisdom fist seal didn't last too long. After Tong Kaitai broke free from the wisdom fist seal's seal, the demonic aura around his body skyrocketed. Even his body was completely enveloped by the demonic aura. The surrounding demonic aura lingered around him, as though he had transformed into a ghost god from the legends of the wilderness. It was extremely terrifying. The claw that stretched for several feet fell, and Tong Kaitai's whole body's gang qi had condensed in his claw. The power was immeasurable, and it crashed down on Chu Xiu. This claw was like Tong Kaitai's Azura claw, but it did not seem like it. The claw was condensed with a powerful demonic aura, which was actually mixed with a strong evil blood aura. The red sleeve blade in Chu Xiu's hand also erupted with demonic aura. The second blade of the Avicii three blades fell, and the demonic blade collided with the demonic claw. In an instant, the demonic aura dispersed, and even the arena became a lot colder. The blades smashed the demonic claw, but at the same time, Chu Xiu's Avicii three blades was also broken. However, Tong Kaitai's figure in front of him turned into a black shadow and ran away. He actually began to escape the moment he attacked. It should be said that he did not intend to fight with Chu Xiu at all. The surrounding people were stunned. Tong Kaitai's performance seemed to be a little timid, which was somewhat inconsistent with his crazy way of doing things. Chu Xiu's hand formed the inner binding seal, and his speed instantly exploded to the extreme. While chasing Tong Kaitai, he said coldly, "The Mirror Lake Villa has been sealed by the array. Even if you escape, where can you escape to?" At this time, Luo Feiheng and the others recovered from the battle with Xiahou Wujiang and gradually surrounded Tong Kaitai. Tong Kaitai smiled and said, "Of course I escaped outside. Look over there, even God is helping me." Just as Chu Xiu was exchanging blows with Tong Kaitai, The outcome of the battle between the Phaseless Demon Sect and the Hidden Sword Villa had also been decided. Sword fans Feng and Cheng and Xiao, and said to say, Shan, Cheng's Shan Li, Chen's Xiao, Shan's lost SS Xiao, but even if they handed over the demon swords, the Phaseless Demon Sect would not let them off. In the past, the Hidden Sword Villa had participated in the siege of the Kunlun Devil Cult. Moreover, the Hidden Sword Villa had also participated in the matter of strangling the Phaseless Demon Sect. Both sides had already become sworn enemies, so there was no difference whether they handed over the demon sword or not. However, the people from the Hidden Sword Villa were very decisive. When Cheng Tingfeng saw that he and the others had fallen into a trap, he chose to burn his blood essence and use the secret technique of the Hidden Sword Villa to destroy the formation, while he protected the others from the back. At this time, there was already a gap in the array. The people from Hidden Sword Villa could leave, and so could Tong Kaitai. Chu Xiao, I'll keep your heart with you for the time being. When I have the chance, I'll come and take it. With that, Tong Kaitai's speed increased, and he directly fled towards the gap in the formation. Looking at Tong Kaitai's back, Chu Xiao's eyes flashed with a strong killing intent. His current state was not very good. In the battle with Shen Bai, he had expended too much energy, and he had also suffered some injuries. Moreover, Tong Kaitai's speed was not slow either. If it was someone else, Chu Xiao would most likely give up on the chase and find another opportunity to finish him off. However, this person was Tong Kaitai, and he had also discovered the abnormality in his heart. This was something that Chu Xiao could not tolerate. Tong Kaitai already knew this secret, and it was hard to guarantee that he would not tell others. What Chu Xiao was most worried about was that this matter would be known by the Miaojiang Moon worshipping cult. People's imagination was very strong. There were many people in the pugilistic world who knew about the glazed gold silk goo, but very few people knew about its characteristics. The Miaojiang Moon worshipping cult was one of them. If the people from the Miaojiang Moon worshipping cult knew that Chu Xiao's heart was abnormal, and they found out about his strange talent through clues, would they link it to the glazed gold silk goo? Although the probability was very small, Chu Xiao did not dare to guarantee it. It was the safest to kill the crisis before it started. So today, Tong Kaitai must die. At this moment, Chu Xiao made a decision. He pinched the inner binding seal, but at the same time the aura shield erupted, his whole body was filled with blood mist, and his blood essence was burning continuously. Chu Xiao's figure was like an arrow that left the bow, and he was almost behind Tong Kaitai in an instant. Seeing Chu Xiao's action, Tong Kaitai's expression suddenly changed. He really could not understand why Chu Xiao would choose to chase after him like a madman, even going so far as to burn his essence blood, something that would harm both himself and others. Even when Chu Xiao had been fighting Shen Bai, he had not been so desperate. Although he attacked Chu Xiao several times, in fact, he really did not cause any actual harm to Chu Xiao. So why did Chu Xiao do things so resolutely? Was he the madman, or was he the madman? But at this time, Tong Kaitai could not care so much, because Chu Xiao in front of him had already slashed with his saber. As the saber fell, the boundless demonic aura suddenly shrouded the red sleeve saber in his hand and his whole body. Shrill ghost howls sounded. Avicii hell, eternal fall. Tong Kaitai was very familiar with this saber, because Chu Xiao used this saber just now to defeat Shen Bai. But everyone had seen the consumption of the saber just now. It was absolutely not easy for Chu Xiao to use such a saber. As a result, he used it for the second time in a short time. How much did he want Tong Kaitai to die? In the face of this terrifying saber, Tong Kaitai gritted his teeth. The blue veins and blood vessels on his arm soared, and countless blood mist lingered on it. When the claw fell, it was no longer a demonic claw, but a bloody claw stained with endless blood mist. Blood-weeping demon hand. This was Tong Kaitai's real trump card, but it consumed the blood chi of his whole body. Even after using it, his arm would be temporarily crippled for a period of time. The long saber stained with the demonic aura of hell slashed through the blood-weeping demon hand, and the gloomy demonic aura tore the demonic hand. The scene when these two people fought was simply a killing between the demonic path. As the saber fell, Chu Xiu's face was incomparably pale. The demonic aura was surging, and even his eyes were filled with a strong demonic aura. But looking at Tong Kai-tai, who was opposite him, after taking 3 of Chu Xiu's Avichi Dao sabers, his injuries were even more serious than Chu Xiu's. His entire right arm was already dripping with blood, and the flesh was torn apart. In some places, even the eerie white bone was exposed. Madman! Tong Kai-tai cursed in his heart. Many people in the pugilistic world scolded him as a madman, but Tong Kai-tai now believed that Chu Xiu was the madman from the bottom of his heart. There was a reason why he acted crazily and killed people, but he could not understand why Chu Xiu was so relentless in trying to kill him, even at the cost of both of them suffering. What exactly did he want? However, he could not care so much now. Now that he had lost an arm, if he did not hurry and escape, his fate would be miserable. Not to mention that Luo Feiheng and the rest were chasing after him. Tong Kai-tai himself also had many enemies in Jianghu. Even someone who had nothing to do with him could easily hit him when he was down, when he was seriously injured, wanting to kill him and go to Mount Longhu for the bounty. But just as he was about to escape, Chu Xiu suddenly put away his saber and formed a seal with both hands. It was a very simple seal. His left hand was lightly clenched into a fist, and his right thumb was lightly pressed against the left index finger. However, such a simple hand seal blossomed with a dazzling radiance in Chu Xiu's hands. It was as dazzling as the sun. May all living beings be perfect, and let out supreme light. Preamble formula, Perfect Aquarius Seal. Feeling the power contained in the Perfect Aquarius Seal, Tong Kai-tai roared in anger. Boundless demonic aura erupted from his body, but in an instant, it was swallowed by the endless light. Under this power, everything would be melted and destroyed. The light scattered, and the demonic aura had completely dissipated. A soft sound rang out, and Tong Kai-tai's body was sent flying to the side like a broken rag doll. His face was already beyond recognition, and it was almost impossible to tell that he was human. At this time, Chu Xiu's face was frighteningly pale, as if he was a zombie. As his breathing sounded, the skin around Chu Xiu's meridians split open, and blood gushed out like a fountain. It was incomparably terrifying, and those who did not know would think that Chu Xiu had been killed by 1,000 cuts. Seeing this scene, Luo Feiheng and the rest who rushed over from behind were stunned. The other cultivators were also stunned. In the past, they all thought that Tong Kai-tai was a madman, but now they were sure that Chu Xiu was the real madman. In their opinion, the enmity between Chu Xiu and Tong Kai-tai was not that big. Tong Kai-tai had provoked Chu Xiu twice, and it was not a big deal. At most, it could be considered as 2 small conflicts. But in the end, because of such a small matter, Chu Xiu was willing to kill Tong Kai-tai on the spot, even at the cost of both sides suffering. What kind of enmity did he have? Was it really necessary? Everyone present shuddered and looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of fear in their eyes. Sometimes, people who could not be seen through were the most terrifying. Obviously, they could not see through Chu Xiu. This person simply could not be judged by common sense. Chapter 257. Most people in the Jianghu were used to measuring everything by benefits, and those who violated the rules of benefits were either fools or lunatics. In their eyes, Chu Xiu was the latter. This kind of person was the most untouchable, because it was impossible to guess what the other party wanted to do through benefits. In fact, Chu Xiu was also a realist, and he also valued benefits. But now, Tong Kai-tai had touched Chu Xiu's reverse scale. In order to completely eliminate a hidden danger, it was worth it to pay some price, although this price seemed a little big to others. Luo Feiheng and the others rushed over, and they frowned when they saw Chu Xiu's appearance. Mo Tianlin asked directly, "Brother Chu, can you still hold on? I say, you're too desperate. That Tong Kai-tai is arrogant, and he has long been wanted by the celestial master abode of Mount Longhu. Even if he escapes today, he will be caught and brought to the celestial master abode to be punished sooner or later. Why are you doing this?" Chu Xiu formed the lion seal in his hand and began to suppress the injuries in his body. At the same time, he threw a handful of elixirs into his mouth and said faintly, "I want to kill him because I want to kill him." If the Celestial Master Abode wants to kill him, it's their business. This is not the same. Chu Xiu's reason made them speechless, but when they thought of Chu Xiu's history of intermittently going crazy, they all understood. The others also thought of the time in front of the Water Cloud Monastery, when Chu Xiu went crazy and fought against 100 people, killing them all. Obviously, this time, Chu Xiu might have gone crazy again, and that was why he desperately wanted to kill Tong Kaitai even if he was seriously injured. When they thought of this, those who wanted to be enemies with Chu Xiu in the future had to think twice. When Chu Xiu was in a normal state, he might still care about one's identity and status, and consider the gains and losses of killing one, and so on. However, when Chu Xiu went crazy, all of this was uncertain. Moreover, the people present were a little emotional. This time, Tong Kaitai also courted death by jumping out to provoke Chu Xiu twice. In fact, Tong Kaitai was still very careful in the pugilistic world. He had been chased by the experts of Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Abode for so long, and he had relied on his perception to evade them. But this time, when faced with Chu Xiu's direct attack, he couldn't even dodge. At this time, the embryo of the magic weapon in the center of the 5 rings had basically taken shape, and it was in the shape of a long saber. However, the aura was extremely unstable, and it was not. And it was not. It was not. It was not yet. Everyone could guess this because Mo Yezi was not here to clean up the mess. Although it was using an array to refine, this kind of refining technique was definitely not that simple. As long as the array was set up, it would be fine. Otherwise, wouldn't this array be equivalent to a refining grandmaster? However, Chu Xiu did not care. He had an idea in his mind, and he could try it now. Chu Xiu took out a secret box, which contained 2 fragments. They were the fragments of the Sky Devil Order that Chu Xiu got from the Ghost King sect and the Zhang siblings. Chu Xiu took out a secret box from his bosom. Inside it were 2 shard-like things. It was the God's Devil Order shard that Chu Xiu got from the Ghost King sect and the Zhang siblings. This thing was forged from the same material as the embryo in front of him. They came from the same source. If he threw them in as well, would there be any changes to the divine weapon? Wiping away the blood on his face, Chu Xiu said to Immortal Lin and the other 2, "Guys, please protect me." Chu Xiu wiped the blood off his face and said to Immortal Lin and the other 2, "I'll have to trouble you to protect me." In fact, it was fine even if they did not help, because everyone was scared out of their wits. In fact, it didn't matter even if they didn't help, because everyone present was scared out of their wits. They hadn't forgotten Chu Xiu's crazy look of vowing to kill Tong Kaitai just now. Although Chu Xiu looked miserable at this time, who could guarantee that Chu Xiu didn't have the strength to fight now? Therefore, even though the embryo of the divine weapon was right in front of them, none of them dared to have any ideas about it. Chu Xiu directly threw the 2 fragments of the God's Devil token into the furnace. Although Mo Tianlin and the others were curious about what it was, they did not ask too much. After the 2 fragments of the Sky Devil Order were thrown into the furnace, the Sky Devil Order that was not contaminated with demonic chi was the first to fuse with the embryo, causing the saber-shaped embryo to swell up and undergo some changes. After seeing this scene, Chu Xiu's eyes suddenly lit up. It's effective. Although the second Sky Devil Order had fused with the saber embryo began to tremble violently. The second fragment of the Sky Devil Order was stained with powerful and pure demonic chi, but the fragment of the Sky Devil Order from the Ghost King sect and the original saber embryo did not. Chu Xiu didn't know why he obtained the piece from the Ghost King sect, but the fragment of the Sky Devil Order that the Hidden Sword Villa gave to Mo Yezi was also stained with a lot of demonic chi, so Mo Yezi must have used some method to erase it. After all, what he wanted to refine was a divine weapon. Although it was said that a demonic weapon was also a divine weapon, it would not sound good to say it out loud. Therefore, the demonic chi on the Sky Devil Order was erased by Mo Yezi. However, now that Chu Xiu had thrown in another fragment of the Sky Devil Order that was surging with demonic chi, the blade was once again tainted with a trace of demonic nature. However, he didn't know what material Mo Yezi had added to the original embryo, but it actually caused the saber embryo and the demonic nature to repel each other, making it impossible for the two to fuse. Chu Xiu frowned. If that was the case, he might have overreached himself. It was possible that the saber embryo and the two fragments of the Sky Devil Order would be shattered. After the two sides were in a deadlock for a full 15 minutes, the demonic chi finally gained the upper hand. A lump of iron made of unknown material was forcefully squeezed out of the saber embryo. The Sky Devil Order that was stained with demonic chi completely fused with the saber embryo, and the originally silver-white saber embryo instantly turned pitch black. Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "It's a pity that it didn't become a divine weapon in the end. However, from the looks of it, it definitely has the sixth transformation." After a divine weapon was refined, there would be a phenomenon of light appearing, but this saber did not. It was obvious that something had gone wrong, and it was a step away from becoming a divine weapon. Chu Xiu, on the other hand, was mentally prepared. The problem should be with the thing that repelled the demonic chi. However, although the expected divine weapon did not succeed, a sixth transformation treasure was still useful to Chu Xiu. The most important thing was that this saber actually had the foundation to become a divine weapon. After all, whether it was the Sky Devil Order or some of the materials Mo Yezi had added, they were definitely some precious items. The materials determined that this saber had the foundation to become a divine weapon. At this moment, the sound of a saber trembling could be heard. The long saber actually directly rushed towards Chu Xiu. Mo Tianlin wanted to intercept it, but Chu Xiu raised his hand, indicating that Mo Tianlin did not need to. He did not feel any killing intent from the saber. Chu Xiu stretched out his hand and directly held the long saber in his hand. However, in an instant, the long saber began to absorb Chu Xiu's blood, causing Chu Xiu's complexion to become even paler. This long saber had absorbed a lot of Chu Xiu's sharp chi, and it originally had a trace of Chu Xiu's mark. At this time, after absorbing Chu Xiu's blood, the saber had completely established a connection with its owner. Even if others obtained this saber, they would not be able to use its full power. Fortunately, this saber did not absorb too much of Chu Xiu's chi and blood. However, after absorbing Chu Xiu's chi and blood, the shape of the saber also changed a little. At this time, everyone carefully looked at this long saber. Whether it was Mo Tianlin, Xie Xiao Lu, or Luo Feiheng, their first impression of this saber was that it was very evil. It was a very evil saber. Normally, after a weapon was forged, the refiner would refine the appearance of the weapon. Normally, this saber should be the same. However, because Mo Yezi was not present, this saber was only in the shape of a simple saber. The entire body of the saber was slightly longer than the red sleeve saber, but it was still long and narrow. The blade and hilt were both pitch black, and the shape was very simple. However, the truly evil thing was that after it absorbed Chu Xiu's blood, traces of bloodlines appeared on the body of the saber. At the point where the blade and hilt connected, the bloodlines converged and condensed into something that looked like a scarlet eye, adding a bit of strangeness. Holding the long saber tightly and feeling the power within it, Chu Xiu could roughly determine that the grade of this saber should be a top-grade 6th Revolution precious weapon. It was only one step away from becoming a divine weapon. Moreover, its nature was the same as the blood spear red kite in Luo Feiheng's hands. They were both precious weapons with the potential to become divine weapons. In terms of value, it was far beyond ordinary 6th-rank precious weapons. Mo Tianlin said, "Give it a name." Normally, a weapon should be named by the forger, but now, I think even Master Mo Yezi will not be able to recognize this weapon. Since it was forged by you, you should naturally be the one to name it. Chu Xiu glanced at the long saber in his hand. On the black long saber, there were evil bloodlines dancing. After thinking for a while, Chu Xiu directly said, "Demonic dance." Using the demonic order as the main material, it naturally had to be named demonic. Similarly, the demonic dance also had the meaning of demonic dance, magnificent and dangerous at the same time. Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "Brother Chu, I'm afraid this name is a bit of a taboo. This thing was originally forged from the demonic order of the Kunlun devil cult, and you directly named it demonic dance. This is equivalent to once again reminding the people of Jianghu of the connection between the saber and the Kunlun devil cult. Chu Xiu indifferently said, "In the past, it might have been a bit of a taboo, but Hidden Sword Mountain Villa dared to cooperate with Mo Yezi to restore the demon sword Everlasting Yearning. Compared to them, I am just a small sorcerer in the presence of a great sorcerer. Even if the sky falls, there will be tall people to hold it up. Now, no one will pay attention to me." Mo Tianlin pondered for a moment and realized that it made sense. The God Weapon Conference this time was very noisy at the beginning, but it was estimated that it would be even more noisy after it ended. Chapter 258. He didn't get the God Weapon, but Chu Xiu got a precious weapon, so it wasn't a big loss. The entire Mirror Lake Villa was empty, and Chu Xiu was also heavily injured. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly followed Mo Tianlin and the others back to the Ji State Prefecture to recuperate and pay attention to the movements in the Jianghu. This time, Chu Xiu's injuries were a little more serious, mainly the damage to his meridians. He used a perfect Aquarius seal to blast Tong Kai Tai to death, but the backlash of this martial art directly tore the meridians in Chu Xiu's body. The last 3 styles of the 9 words formula consumed an extremely shocking amount of inner strength, and the explosive power was also a test of Chu Xiu's endurance. At that moment, the true qi directly tore Chu Xiu's meridians. Now, it would take a certain amount of time to repair. Even with the glazed golden silk goo and Chu Xiu's amazing recovery ability, it would still take him 10 days to half a month. During the time that Chu Xiu recuperated, the outside world was in an uproar because of this God Weapon Conference. Of course, this had nothing to do with Chu Xiu. Half a month later, Chu Xiu's injuries were almost healed, and he directly came out of seclusion. Hearing the news that Chu Xiu had come out of seclusion, Mo Tianlin and the others all came. However, after the 3 of them pushed the door open and entered, they all looked at Chu Xiu with a strange expression. Chu Xiu was surprised and said, "Why are you guys looking at me like that?" Mo Tianlin coughed and said, "Your ranking on the Longhu list has changed. Do you know about it?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I expected it." He had already stepped into the 3-flower realm and was in the limelight at the God Weapon Convention. If he still couldn't improve his ranking on the Longhu leaderboard, then the fairness of the Wind Sweeping Tower would be questioned. Mo Tianlin had a strange expression on his face as he asked, "But do you know what your rank is on the Longhu leaderboard?" "Top 10? 6th place." Mo Tianlin slammed the table. After hearing Mo Tianlin's words, Chu Xiu did not expect Wind Sweeping Tower to raise his ranking so high and even push Nie Donglu down. Rubbing his chin, Chu Xiu murmured, "That's not right. I have nothing to do with Wind Sweeping Tower. Why would they rank me so highly?" Xie Xiaolu said, "That's reasonable. After all, you crippled Shunbai and killed Tong Kai Tai in this God Weapon Convention. Although Shunbai was not ranked on the Longhu leaderboard, based on the strength he had displayed, he was definitely in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. As for Tong Kai Tai, he was ranked 13th on the Longhu leaderboard when he was in the physical invulnerability realm. Now that he has stepped into the 3-flower realm, he was still killed by you. This is also a battle record. In this God Weapon Convention, you basically killed and crippled 2 warriors who could be in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. This ranking is very normal. Also, Nie Donglu is a little disappointing. He has no battle record and no reputation. Wind Sweeping Tower will naturally lower his ranking. This time, you didn't just push him down by 1 place. Instead, you directly pushed Nie Donglu out of the top 10 and into the 11th place. I heard that Nie Donglu has been in seclusion for a while, preparing to break through to the 3-flower realm. He originally relied on his reputation to be in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Now that he has given up his reputation to cultivate, he can't blame the Longhu leaderboard for lowering his ranking. If he also had the strength of the 3-flower realm, then according to the rules, Wind Sweeping Tower would only lower his ranking by 1 place. They wouldn't have dropped him out of the top 10 like they did now. When talking about Nie Donglu, Xie Xiaolu's tone also carried a hint of disdain. He was the kind of person who valued strength above all. The people he hated the most were people like Nie Donglu, who only knew how to seek personal gain and scheme. Although Nie Donglu calculated his ranking to be in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, it was very unstable. Just like how he was now, once his reputation couldn't keep up, he would immediately be pushed down a lot. Only strength was fundamental. At this time, Mo Tianlin pointed at Luo Feiheng and said, "This time, you're not the only one who performed well. Luo Feiheng is the same. She is now in the 10th place of the Longhu leaderboard, directly pushing Xiahou Wujiang down. To be honest, Xiahou Wujiang is quite unlucky. Everyone else rose in the rankings after stepping into the three-flower realm, but he fell, and by 2 places at that. He is now behind Nie Donglu in the 12th place. There are external invulnerability realm warriors in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, but as a three-flower realm warrior, he is the only one who hasn't stepped into the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard." When Mo Tianlin said this, there was a look of schadenfreude on his face. For him, he was naturally happy that his enemy, Xiahou Wujiang, was unlucky. Of course, this time, Xiahou Wujiang was courting death himself. If he hadn't jumped out to fight Chu Xiu, he wouldn't have been defeated by Luo Feiheng. Although the situation was a bit complicated at the beginning, it was actually Luo Feiheng and the other 2 who besieged him. However, the main force was Luo Feiheng, so this achievement was naturally attributed to Luo Feiheng. On the other side, Luo Feiheng wasn't modest. Instead, he smiled proudly. Not only did he teach Xiahou Wujiang a lesson, but he was also able to step into the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. It felt good. At this time, Mo Tianlin suddenly said to Xie Xiaolu, "This time, it seems like you're the unluckiest one." Brother Chu and Fei Hong's Longhu leaderboard have risen, but my ranking hasn't changed. You, on the other hand, have been squeezed out by 1 place. Previously, Xie Xiaolu was ranked 12th on the Longhu leaderboard. Now that Chu Xiu had stepped in, others like Nie Donglu and Xiahou Wujiang, although the leaderboard had changed, were still in the top 12. Therefore, Xie Xiaolu was naturally squeezed out by 1 place. Since Tong Kaitai, who was originally ranked 13th, was killed, Mo Tianlin, who was ranked behind him, didn't change his ranking. Xie Xiaolu shrugged indifferently. He was convinced by Chu Xiu's strength. Even if he was squeezed out by 1 place, he didn't have anything to say. That's right, in the end, who has the demon sword Everlasting Yearning? Chu Xiu asked. Mo Tianlin put away his teasing attitude and said in a deep voice, "Speaking of which, it's quite interesting. This matter actually ended in a lose-lose situation. The phaseless demon sect pursued relentlessly. After the hidden sword mountain villa thought that they couldn't escape, Cheng Tingfeng actually chose to forcefully activate the demon sword Everlasting Yearning that hadn't completely recovered. Although it exploded with astonishing power, the Everlasting Yearning wasn't something he could control. Therefore, after he heavily injured Situ Li and the other martial artists of the phaseless demon sect, he was also heavily injured by the backlash. Most importantly, you've also seen the appearance of the demon sword Everlasting Yearning. It hadn't completely recovered, and after being activated, it actually shattered. A portion of the fragments were obtained by the phaseless demon sect, while the rest were obtained by the hidden sword mountain villa. The leaders of both sides were heavily injured, and the people below them were also injured. If they forcefully fought, they would most likely perish together. Therefore, the phaseless demon sect chose to retreat. Chu Xiu nodded. This Cheng Tingfeng was really able to do it, to actually forcefully activate the demonic weapon. Although the Everlasting Yearning was a demon weapon, it was still a 9th transformation treasure sword. In the hidden sword mountain villa, it was the kind that could be worshipped. In the end, Cheng Tingfeng was forced to forcefully activate its power, harming others and himself. It was obvious that he was forced into a dead end by the phaseless demon sect. Anyway, in the end, everyone would split up and no one would benefit. Mo Tianlin sighed and said, "Speaking of which, the ones who benefited the most from this God Weapon Conference are us, the younger generation martial artists. The others didn't get any benefits. The phaseless demon sect suffered heavy losses. Although they didn't let the hidden sword mountain villa get the Everlasting Yearning, it caused the Everlasting Yearning to be completely destroyed. It was the same for the hidden sword mountain villa. Originally, they planned to hold the God Weapon Conference on the surface to earn some reputation and secretly repair the everlasting yearning. However, they didn't expect to suffer a double loss this time. After such a thing happened, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa did gain some reputation, but it was all scolded and ridiculed by the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa for being blinded by greed. Even Mo Yi, who knew that the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa took out the demon sword Everlasting Yearning, still wanted to help repair it, was also scolded by many people. After everyone chatted for a while, Mo Tianlin asked, "So many things happened in the God Weapon Conference. Next, I need to go back to the Mo clan to report. Where are the three of you planning to go?" Chu Xiu said, "This time, I came with the mission of the Guanzhong torture room. Now that the mission is completed, I naturally need to go back to the Guanzhong torture room to report." Xie Xiaolu shrugged and said, "This time, I came out to relax. I've only been out for a short period of time, so I won't go back. I plan to continue walking around in Eastern Qi before going back." Luo Feiheng snorted and said, "Yesterday, someone from the Luo clan sent me a message, telling me to go back quickly. Xiahou Wujiang, that bastard, lost and went back to the Xiahou clan to complain, and the Xiahou clan reported it to the Luo clan. When I go back, I will definitely be scolded by my old man." When saying this, Luo Feiheng's tone revealed a hint of unwillingness. If it were Mo Tianlin who defeated Xiahou Wujiang, then no matter how timid the Mo clan was, they would not show weakness to the Xiahou clan. Instead, they would put in more effort to cultivate Mo Tianlin. But Luo Feiheng was different. After all, she was a woman, and was not worthy of the Luo clan's full cultivation. So, if she defeated Xiahou Wujiang, it would not bring glory to the Luo clan, but would cause trouble for the Luo clan. The people present did not speak. Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu knew the situation of the Luo clan, and Chu Xiu also knew what Luo Feiheng would face in the future. It was useless to say this kind of thing. But at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Everyone, I have a suggestion now. We can use each other's strength." "What suggestion?" the three people all asked. Chu Xiu glanced at the three people and said, "At present, although we are all juniors in our respective forces, we also have some strength and influence in our hands. Moreover, there is no conflict or hostility between our forces. How about this? The four of us join forces and secretly establish an organization, not involving the forces behind us, only to provide resources and help to each other. What do you think?" Chapter 259. Chu Xiu's suggestion immediately piqued the interest of the three. Lin muttered, "Brother Chu, tell us in detail, what do you mean?" Chu Xiu replied, "What I mean is actually very simple. Just like how the three of you helped me today, I will remember this favor, and I will definitely return it in the future. However, today's matter is just a coincidence. If we join forces and one side needs help, as long as the others have the ability, they will come to help. Of course, this help isn't in vain. Even blood brothers should clearly calculate their debts. Those who ask for help can either repay it with things or with favors. Things like benefits are the most unreliable, but at the same time, they are also the most reliable. Sometimes, an alliance formed with benefits is even more solid than just relying on loyalty. To sum it up in one sentence, the organization I want to establish is only for ourselves, and not for the powers behind us. Does everyone understand?" Mo Tianlin and the others nodded, their faces revealing contemplative expressions. They naturally understood what Chu Xiu meant. They were themselves, and the powers behind them were the powers behind them. This alliance formed by Chu Xiu was only for themselves. Sometimes, when they needed help, it would be related to their own sex predicament. For example, Chu Xiu, his time in the Guanzhong torture room could be said to be fraught with danger. As a newcomer, and with a superior like Wei Juduan, it was impossible for Chu Xiu not to plot against each other. There was also Mo Tianlin. Although he was the number one person in the younger generation of the Mo family, there were countless people in the Mo family who wanted to see him suffer or drag him down. As for Luo Feiheng, needless to say, everyone knew about her situation. Xie Xiaolu should be the most relaxed among the people present. This was because his master was the World Alliance's Qinqing Di. As long as his master was present, he didn't have to worry about his position. Even so, there were still some people in the World Alliance who refused to accept him. In the past, they could only face this kind of predicament by themselves. Even if they were best friends, sometimes it was difficult for them to ask for help. And if it was as Chu Xiu said, and everyone established this organization, then although there would still be some friendship between them, it would be more of a relationship of benefits. The person who wanted to ask for help could also openly ask for help from others. At most, they would owe someone a favor in the future, and it would be enough for them to take it out. Chu Xiu continued, moreover, the organization we have established can also continue to recruit other people, whether they are rogue cultivators or sects. As long as you feel that they are reliable, you can be recruited into the organization, such as Brother Liu Fengxian. Brother Liu is an acquaintance of me and Brother Xie. He is absolutely reliable, and his strength is also outstanding. If you can find such a reliable expert when you need help, the benefits will definitely be far beyond your imagination. Hearing the scene described by Chu Xiu, the three people present were somewhat tempted. The three of them all had their own connections, and there were also many reliable ones. As long as they could pull them in, and let them feel the strength and convenience of the organization, they would naturally pull in a few more people. In this way, as long as there were no accidents in the middle, even if it was only 10 years, their organization would be like a rolling snowball, thoroughly expanding. Then what if someone betrays us? Brother Chu, the organization you want to establish is a big taboo whether it is you or us sects. Xie Xiaolu suddenly asked. For the various sects and families, they naturally hoped that their disciples would wholeheartedly pledge loyalty to their own organization. But now, they had secretly joined another organization and had selfish motives. No matter where it was, this was something that the leaders of the sects and families could not tolerate. Chu Xiu smiled coldly and said, "What I hate the most are traitors. Since everyone can benefit from this organization, then those who attempt to destroy this organization will be everyone's enemy. Since he has already become everyone's enemy, then there's no need to say what kind of treatment he will receive." Mo Tianlin shivered when he heard this. If their organization could really develop to a certain level, and not just the few of them like they were now, then they would definitely be treated as enemies and traitors by everyone. That would definitely be a terrifying outcome. Luo Feiheng suddenly became interested and said, "This suggestion is not bad, I agree." Mo Tianlin said, "I also have no objections." He had helped Chu Xiu, and Chu Xiu had also helped him. Both sides had a favor, so in theory he had already tasted this benefit. If he could develop more people, then he would undoubtedly obtain even more benefits. Xie Xiaolu thought for a moment, then muttered, "Then who would be the most suitable person to manage our organization?" While saying this, Xie Xiaolu stared at Chu Xiu. He was convinced by Chu Xiu, but only in terms of strength. However, he had never considered himself below Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "An organization with such simple rules doesn't need a leader, only a supervisor. Each of our members is actually a supervisor of each other." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Xie Xiaolu nodded and said, "All right, I also agree." At this time, Luo Feiheng suddenly said, "Wait, although we don't have many people, we are still an organization. How about we give it a resounding name?" Mo Tianlin said, "Since we are prepared to absorb all the experts in the world, how about we call it the World Assembly?" Xie Xiaolu rolled his eyes and said, "Are you preparing to provoke my World Alliance? If you anger my master, I won't be able to do anything about it." Chu Xiu also thought in his heart, "If you call it the World Assembly, what will Xiongba think? Then what do you think we should call it?" Mo Tianlin was somewhat unconvinced and asked back. Xie Xiaolu patted the floating feather blade behind him and said, "Everyone uses blades and swords, how about we call it the Alliance of Blades and Swords?" Luo Feiheng pointed at the bloodied spear red kite next to him with some dissatisfaction and snorted, "Are those who don't use blades and swords allowed to join? What kind of lousy name is this?" Saying this, Luo Feiheng turned his gaze to Chu Xiu and said, "These two fellows are somewhat unreliable. Since you are the one who suggested this, what do you want to call it?" Chu Xiu pondered for a moment and said, We should establish an organization and secretly cooperate with each other. This kind of thing should be low-key. The name doesn't need to be too resounding. How about 9-branch hall? The three of them looked at each other, and Luo Feiheng asked curiously, 9-branch hall? What's so particular about it? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, 90% of your strength, 10% of your results, and 10% of your leeway so that you won't exhaust yourself physically and mentally. You and I were born in the martial world, and in our lives, we will face countless life and death battles and struggle in this chaotic world. The reason I want to unite everyone and establish the 9-branch hall is so that everyone can have an easier time in this chaotic world. We only need to use 90% of our strength to accomplish 10% of our tasks, and we don't need to use all of our strength. That's why it's called the 9-branch hall. The three of them nodded, and all of them felt a bit emotional. The one who felt the most emotional was probably Luo Feiheng, who had a seemingly unreliable appearance. As a woman, she had to bear more than anyone else on her journey. At that moment, Chu Xiu took out another gold coin. This was the 9-dragon coin unique to the land of Eastern Qi. The land of Eastern Qi was rich and prosperous, so other than some normal copper and silver, the land of Eastern Qi also specially made this kind of gold coin as a normal transaction item. On it was engraved the scene of a branch of the Jianghu dynasty of Eastern Qi being taught a divine secret technique by 9 dragons. After the Lu dynasty took power, in order to show their magnanimity, they didn't ban the 9-dragon coin and continued to distribute it. Chu Xiu extended his hand, cut off a corner of the coin, and said, "Everyone in the world comes for benefits. The 9-branch hall isn't for loyalty, but for mutual benefits. So, no matter if it's the Tao or the demon, as long as they are reliable, as long as they have strength, they can join the 9-branch hall. This 9-dragon coin is our symbol. Whoever robs a new person into the 9-branch hall will leave their own martial imprint on the 9-dragon coin and give it to the new person to prove their identity. After all, we are all scattered throughout the martial world. If the person you robs in doesn't know anyone else and misunderstands you, it will be very awkward." Luo Feiheng and the others nodded. Chu Xiu had thought of these details very thoroughly. After the general discussion was over, everyone chatted for a while before leaving. Actually, no one cared too much about the 9-branch hall. Perhaps even they themselves could not imagine how this organization, which seemed like a game to them, would develop to such an extent in the end. Chu Xiu stood on the windowsill of the inn and watched Mo Tianlin and the others leave. He played with the 9-dragon coin in his hand. He roped in Luo Feiheng and the others to establish the 9-branch hall on a whim. However, he already had this thought before. In this martial world, it was true that one was respected by strength, but the prerequisite was that one had the strength to fight against the world alone. Even if one reached the level of Dugu Weiwei and Immortal Ning Xuanji in the past, one still wouldn't dare to say that one was unrivaled under the heavens. In the original plot, although his identity became the demon sect leader, he was far from reaching the level of Dugu Weiwei in the past. Now that the plot had begun to change, it was time for Chu Xiu to use his own advantages and develop a path that was beneficial to him. Establishing the 9-branch hall was one of his plans. Whether it was Lu Fengxian or Luo Feiheng, these outstanding characters in the original plot, Chu Xiu would do his best to befriend them. In the end, he would weave a large net, a net that would cover the entire martial world. Just now, when Xie Xiao Lu asked if the 9-branch hall had a leader, Chu Xiu's answer was no. However, it was only for now. As for whether there would be one in the future, that was an unknown. Chapter 260. Since the matter with Eastern Qi had been settled, Chu Xiu did not want to stay here any longer. He chose to return to the Guanzhong torture room directly. When Chu Xiu returned to Guanzhong, all the cultivators he met along the way, whether they were of a higher position or stronger than Chu Xiu, all nodded to Chu Xiu as a greeting. As for those who were weaker than Chu Xiu in terms of strength and position, even if they were from the headquarters or from the punishment department, they all cupped their hands and greeted Chu Xiu respectfully. The Guanzhong torture room was very realistic. In the past, Chu Xiu was not very famous in the whole of Guanzhong. He was not even as famous as Yuqi, Zhongping, and the other young cultivators of the Guanzhong torture room. But now, after the God Weapon Convention, Chu Xiu had become 6th on the Longhu leaderboard. It could be said that he had become famous overnight. The Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall was not closed off. When the God Weapon Convention had just ended, they had already found out about the situation through the news from the pugilistic world's media. This time, Chu Xiu was representing the Guanzhong torture room to participate in the God Weapon Conference. So, the more attention Chu Xiu made in the God Weapon Conference, the more attention Guanzhong torture room would gain. As for jealousy, when there was a gap between you and someone, they might be jealous. But when the gap between you and that person was large enough, the jealousy would no longer exist. After all, it was a joke to say that you were jealous of a height that you could never reach in your lifetime. Just like how no one in the pugilistic world would be jealous of Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, because they were already legendary existences. Before Chu Xiu reached the entrance of the torture hall, he saw Chu Yuanxing coming over. He patted Chu Xiu's shoulder excitedly and said, "Brother Chu, you did a good job this time. You have greatly increased the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room." Strictly speaking, Chu Yuanxing was not a member of the Guanzhong torture room, but in fact, he was inseparable from the Guanzhong torture room. So, when Chu Xiu helped the Guanzhong torture room at the God Weapon Conference, he was also helping him. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Big brother, you're too polite. Since I'm already a member of the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall, I naturally have to think about the reputation of the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall." Hearing this, Chu Yuanxing could not help but smile proudly. Speaking of which, he could be considered as the person who introduced Chu Xiu to the Guanzhong torture room. Back then, when Chu Xiu saved him, he could have chosen to give Chu Xiu other things to repay him for saving his life. But at that time, he did not know why he only wanted to introduce Chu Xiu to the Guanzhong torture room. Now, it seemed that he had made a good move. He had roped in a powerful person for the Guanzhong torture room. In the past, Chu Yuanxing had also recommended many people to join the Guanzhong torture room. But although those people were somewhat capable, they were generally mediocre. They were not as outstanding as Chu Xiu. But now, Chu Xiu had made a great contribution to the Guanzhong torture room. As the person who recommended Chu Xiu, he was also proud. "By the way, Brother Chu, did anything major happen in the Guanzhong torture room recently?" Chu Xiu asked. After all, he had been away for a few months. He did not know if there were any problems with his subordinates. Chu Yuanxing shook his head and said, "Nothing major, but there is something related to you." "What is it?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and asked. Chu Yuanxing smiled and said, "You crippled Swordmaster Fei Mo, an elite disciple of Sword King City's previous generation in Eastern Qi. This matter made Sword King City very angry. The Xinjiang Hall's Hall Master, Qianji Sword Sect's Pei Zhonglin, personally came to Guanzhong's Punishment Hall half a month ago to seek an explanation from the Hall Master. He wanted to severely punish you and give Sword King City an explanation. I'm afraid those people from Sword King City are really used to being arrogant. Pei Zhonglin also doesn't know what he's doing. He dared to challenge the Hall Master as soon as he stepped into the Martial Dao Grandmaster stage. In the end, he was forced back by the Hall Master with a single move before he could even draw his sword." Chu Xiu nodded. In fact, he had already expected this. He was the face of the Guanzhong torture room. He had made a name for himself on behalf of the Guanzhong torture room, but the internal department of the Guanzhong torture room punished him because of this matter. It would chill the hearts of many martial artists in the Guanzhong torture room and make the Guanzhong torture room lose face. Of course, there was a limit to this. Chu Xiu only crippled Fei Mo, not Fang Qishao. Therefore, Sword King City only sent a Hall Master instead of the Sect Master. If Chu Xiu was really crazy and caused big trouble, Guan Xiu wouldn't be able to handle it even if she wanted to. "By the way, big brother, is Hall Master Guan in the main hall? I have to report to Hall Master Guan first when I come back this time." Chu Xiu asked. Chu Yuanxing said, "There are some things in the Guangdong area that require Hall Master to personally deal with. He will probably be back tomorrow. You stay here for a day first and report to Hall Master tomorrow. Also, tell me some details about the Divine Weapon Conference." Now the news of the Divine Weapon Conference is spread by the wind-sweeping pavilion. Some of the details are not clear. It is definitely better for you to explain as the person involved. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Then I will have to trouble you today, big brother." As Chu Xiu spoke, he directly followed Chu Yuanxing to his courtyard. When Chu Xiu returned to the Guanzhong torture room, Shen Bai, who had his cultivation crippled, was also sent back to the Azure Water Sword sect. When Shen Bai was crippled by Chu Xiu, he was immediately treated by the Mirror Lake Manor's martial artists. Afterwards, the Mirror Lake Manor's martial artists all ran away. It wasn't like Shen Bai was left alone. A few rogue martial artists brought Shen Bai away and escorted him all the way back to the Azure Water Sword sect. Of course, these rogue martial artists didn't really have good intentions. They just wanted to use this matter to ask for some benefits from the Azure Water Sword sect. Right now, in the Azure Water Sword sect's main hall, the unconscious Shen Bai was lying on a stretcher and was placed in the middle of the entire main hall. Lu Gongyuan looked at Shen Bai, who had an extremely low qi presence. It was as if Shen Bai had suddenly aged by more than 10 years. There were still Do Guangchen and a few other Azure Water Sword sect core disciples around, and the atmosphere was already oppressive to the extreme. The few rogue martial artists that escorted Shen Bai were somewhat regretful at this moment. From the looks of it, what if the Azure Water Sword sect killed all of them to vent their anger? Just as these few people were about to die from fear, Lu Gongyuan sighed and waved his hand. "Many thanks for sending my disciple back. You may leave. Someone will bring you to collect some elixirs as a thank you gift." The few rogue martial artists then let out a long breath and quickly said, "Many thanks, Senior Lu. This is what we should do." With that, they hurriedly retreated out of the room. After they left, Do Guangchen spoke with bloodshot eyes. "Chu Xiu deserves to be killed. Master, little junior brother has been crippled. We must find that Chu Xiu to seek justice for this matter." Shen Bai was their Azure Water Sword sect's future hope. Do Guangchen and the others were more or less envious and jealous of Shen Bai, but they knew that their potential was already at the limit. In the future, only Shen Bai would be able to lead the Azure Water Sword sect to rise. Without the skin, where would the hair attach? Only with Shen Bai's rise, the Azure Water Sword sect could rise, and they would still be disciples of the 7 sects and 8 schools. Now that Shen Bai was crippled, the Azure Water Sword sect's hope of rising was forcefully crushed by Chu Xiu. Once Lu Gongyuan died, their Azure Water Sword sect would be forcefully kicked out of the 7 sects and 8 schools. Lu Gongyuan closed his eyes and revealed a trace of grief on his aged face. His wrinkles seemed to have deepened. Chu Xiu deserves to be killed, but how do we kill him? He is our enemy's hero. To us, Chu Xiu is an enemy that must be killed. But to the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu is a hero that helped them become famous. Even if we personally go to the Guanzhong torture room, do you think the Guanzhong torture room will hand him over? I am old and can no longer use the Sinking River sword. Even if I can use this sword, I will not be able to defeat Guan Siu's divine ability, 9 transformations. Of course, if I insist on killing Chu Xiu, it is not difficult. I might be old, but I can still pick up a sword. At most, I will be shameless and guard the Guanzhong torture room. Chu Xiu cannot possibly stay in the Guanzhong for his entire life. But do you know what the consequences are? The consequences are that I am bullying the weak. The Azure Water Sword sect's reputation will be ruined, and people will say that the Azure Water Sword sect is a sore loser. Even if I don't care about my reputation and forcefully kill Chu Xiu, it will incur the wrath of the Guanzhong torture room. Even if it is for their own reputation, the Guanzhong torture room will not remain silent. When I'm here, I can protect all of you by risking my life. But what if I'm dead? You will be facing the endless suppression of the Guanzhong torture room. When that happens, the Azure Water Sword sect will not just be kicked out of the 7 sects and 8 factions, it will be exterminated. Do Guangchen and the others' eyes were red and were silent. They all knew that it wasn't that Lu Gongyuan didn't want to take revenge for Shen Bai. He wanted to kill Chu Xiu more than anyone else. Shen Bai was a disciple that he had raised since he was young. In order to nurture Shen Bai, Lu Gongyuan put in all his effort and treated Shen Bai as his own son. But now, Lu Gongyuan chose to endure, not because he was afraid, but because he was thinking for them. He was afraid that after he died, they would be retaliated by the Guanzhong torture room. Lu Gongyuan squatted down and took out the spirit medicine to feed Shenbai. He even personally used his qi to comb through the medicinal effects. He closed his eyes and sighed. Shenbai was crippled, and it was my fault. Back then, I kept Chu Xiu alive because I wanted to use him as a whetstone for Shenbai. I wanted Shenbai to kill this enemy and achieve success. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would actually grow so terrifyingly? He didn't become Shenbai's whetstone, but Shenbai became his whetstone. I was still too anxious. Dou Guangxun hurriedly said, "Master, don't say that. That Chu Xiu was too ruthless." Normally, when disciples from large sects fight, they would hold back. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would disregard the rules and cripple his junior apprentice brother? Lu Gongyuan waved his hand and said, "Wrong is wrong. There is no need to explain anymore. Chu Xiu and Shenbai have a blood feud. Whether it was to cripple or kill, he was decisive. If he held back, then he would be indecisive. All right, you guys can leave first." After hearing Lu Gongyuan's words, Dou Guangxun and the others had no choice but to leave. Chapter 261. In the Grand Hall, with the help of Lu Gongyuan's qi, the medicinal effects constantly seeped into Shenbai's body, causing Shenbai, who had been unconscious for nearly a month, to slowly wake up. The moment Shenbai saw Lu Gongyuan, he knew where he was. His eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of pain and unwillingness. After a while, he spoke bitterly, "Master, I am sorry. I lost." Besides apologizing, Shenbai didn't know what else to say. He wasn't someone with a weak mental state like Lin Kaiyan, who would be completely disheartened and dispirited after suffering a setback. Even though his cultivation was crippled, Shenbai felt more guilt towards the Azure Water Sword sect and towards his master, Lu Gongyuan. Lu Gongyuan treated him like his own son and taught him everything. He even placed the entire Azure Water Sword sect's future on Shenbai's shoulders. In the end, after a single battle, Shenbai was defeated and crippled. He was defeated so miserably. It could be said that the entire Azure Water Sword sect's future was lost in his hands. How could he not feel guilty? Even his hatred towards Chu Xiu wasn't as heavy as his current guilt. Patting Shenbai's hand, Lu Gongyuan sighed. "There is no need to say sorry. This is all fate, karma. Even I didn't expect Chu Xiu to actually grow to this stage. If the heavens wanted to end my Azure Water Sword sect, without Chu Xiu, there would still be Zhang Xiu and Wang Xiu. The result would still be the same. But I am unwilling." Shenbai gritted his teeth. "After cultivating for more than 10 years, I am just one step away from bringing the Azure Water Sword sect back to prominence. But now I am crippled. Master, your efforts are all in vain." Shenbai knew how much the Azure Water Sword sect paid to nurture him. Even if the Azure Water Sword sect found another young martial artist with the same talent as Shenbai, the Azure Water Sword sect wouldn't be able to nurture a second Shenbai. Because the Azure Water Sword sect had limited resources, Lu Gongyuan's energy was also limited. But right at this moment, Lu Gongyuan suddenly said, "You are truly unwilling?" Shenbai nodded heavily. No one would be unwilling to accept this kind of thing. Lu Gongyuan sighed. "There is always a way out. Even if our Azure Water Sword sect is facing the risk of decline, our ancestors still left us a chance of survival. This chance of survival might not be reliable, and I don't even know if it is real or fake. But apart from it, I have no other way to revitalize the Azure Water Sword sect. Are you willing to give it a try?" Shenbai struggled to stand up, gritted his teeth, and said, "No matter what method it is, this disciple is willing to try." Lu Gongyuan sighed again and said, "In that case, come with me." As he spoke, Lu Gongyuan brought Shenbai to the back mountain of the Azure Water Sword sect. Apart from Lu Gongyuan, who frequented this place, no one else was allowed to enter. "Shenbai, do you remember the legend of my Azure Water Sword sect?" Lu Gongyuan asked. Shenbai nodded and said, "Of course I remember. Legend has it that the Azure Water River was created when two ancient masters fought. One of the masters used a sword to slash it open. Of course, this was only a legend and no one knew if it was true or not. But the only thing that could be confirmed was that there were indeed sword Dao experts who fought here at Songlan River. That Songlan sword sect's founder saw the sword scars left behind by the experts here, which was why he suddenly had an epiphany. His strength improved greatly, and he established the sect here. After thousands of years of development, it became one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, the Songlan sword sect. Lu Gongyuan suddenly said, "What if I say the legend is true? Is this huge azure water river really created by a human?" Shen Bai's eyes revealed a trace of shock. What? It's true? With Shen Bai's current cultivation, he couldn't imagine what it was like to create a river with a single slash. Even a martial Dao master like Lu Zongyuan couldn't do this. To be able to do this, they might not be humans anymore. It would be more appropriate to call them immortals or gods. Lu Gongyuan said in a deep voice, "It might sound unbelievable, but it is indeed true." And when the 2 masters fought, one of them was seriously injured at the location of the Azure Water Sword sect. In the past, my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor was just an ordinary hunter. He accidentally rescued that expert, but that level of expert had already surpassed the limits of the human body. Ordinary methods were simply unable to save him. Moreover, that expert was already on the verge of death. But before that expert died, he drew a sword scar that contained the inheritance of the martial Dao intent for my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor. It is because of that sword scar that the Azure Water Sword sect exists today. Otherwise, if it was like the legends where my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor only saw the traces left behind during a battle and established the Azure Water Sword sect, then my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor was truly a heavenly prodigy. I'm afraid he would have long been accepted into a major sect instead of being a nameless individual. When Shen Bai heard these secrets from Lu Gongyuan, his pale face couldn't help but reveal a trace of shock. With his cultivation level, hearing these things was like listening to legends. A sword scar left behind on the verge of death created one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, the Azure Water Sword sect. How strong was this person? Most importantly, such a master was seriously injured on the spot. How strong was the person who killed him? Lu Gongyuan said in a deep voice, "These things are the core secrets of the Azure Water Sword sect. It must be handed over to the next sect master, so even your eldest senior brother and the others don't know about it." In the past, that master left behind a powerful cultivation technique and asked the founder of the Azure Water Sword sect to find a fated person to help him pass it down. Of course, the members of the Azure Water Sword sect could also cultivate it, but that master bluntly said that the founder of the Azure Water Sword sect didn't have the qualifications to cultivate this cultivation technique. Humans are selfish, and the founder of the Azure Water Sword sect was the same. He tried to cultivate this cultivation technique, but found that he couldn't make up his mind to cultivate it. Later on, the Azure Water Sword sect didn't show this cultivation technique to anyone and only allowed the elites of the sect to try it. But without exception, all of them failed. In the past, that master asked the Azure Water Sword sect to find a fated person to pass down the cultivation technique, but in the end, the Azure Water Sword sect kept the cultivation technique for themselves and only allowed their own disciples to try it. Needless to say, this kind of behavior was somewhat immoral and very selfish. But none of the Azure Water Sword sect's sect masters actually thought of showing this cultivation technique to outsiders. It was due to greed, but it was also human nature. What kind of cultivation technique was left behind by such a master? Was it a 9-revolution cultivation technique, a paragon cultivation technique, or a legendary peerless divine technique? If the Azure Water Sword sect handed over this kind of cultivation technique, then they would be the real idiots. But it wasn't known if this was due to their selfishness. After so many years, countless Azure Water Sword sect's elites, even the sect master, had personally tried it, but they all failed. Lu Gongyuan pressed the trigger and a cave actually appeared at the back of the mountain. He walked into the cave with Shen Bai. In the deepest part of the cave, there was a skeleton sitting in the middle. The skeleton was very strange. Even though it was a skeleton, it didn't have the slightest feeling of terror. Instead, it was completely white and was actually emitting a sword aura like the edge of a sword. This skeleton was actually like a sword, causing Shen Bai, who was a swordsman, to involuntarily have the desire to worship it. At this moment, beside the skeleton, there were more than a dozen skeletons, but they were all in a kneeling position towards the skeleton in the middle. Lu Gongyuan spoke in a deep voice. The skeleton in the center is the skeleton of that master. After millions of years, it still remains immortal and is still as resplendent as before. The surrounding skeletons are the elites of our Azure Water Sword sect who tried to cultivate this cultivation technique. Some of them were even the sect master. After passing down the position to the next sect master, they chose to come here for a life and death seclusion to cultivate this cultivation technique. You have also seen the result. If you don't succeed, you will die. These seniors are kneeling here and also have the intention to apologize to that master. The sect seniors who chose to come here to cultivate this cultivation technique all had amazing talent and strength. Some were even stronger than you. There were many who reached the martial Dao master realm, but all of them died here. If you choose to cultivate this cultivation technique, there is almost no chance of survival. If you don't cultivate, your martial arts might be crippled, but you are still young. My Azure Water Sword sect can also give you a lifetime of riches and honor. Shen Bai didn't even consider and said, Master, there is no need to say anything more. I choose to cultivate this cultivation technique. There were plenty of martial artists who had their martial arts crippled, but for most martial artists, the feeling of having their martial arts crippled was simply worse than death. If they had never obtained such powerful strength, it was fine for them to be ordinary people for the rest of their lives. But they had already tasted the feeling of power, and the result was that they were suddenly knocked down from the clouds. This feeling was truly worse than death. If it was a martial artist with mediocre strength, then so be it. They might choose to live on. But Shen Bai was different. He was an extremely prideful person. Back when he faced Chu Xiu on the stage, he knew at the last moment that he would most likely lose, but he didn't choose to escape. Instead, he used a secret technique to fight to the death with Chu Xiu. Now, he naturally wouldn't choose to live on in such a humiliating manner. Since he still had a chance, even though this chance was extremely slim, he had to grab it. If he didn't succeed, then he would die trying. Lu Gongyuan sighed, Since you have such determination, then I won't say anything more. The cultivation technique is here. As he spoke, Lu Gongyuan waved his hand and swept off the dust on the wall. Rows of sharp sword chi words appeared, as if they were carved by a long sword. Among them, the most eye-catching were the opening 4 sentences. 10,000 chi is born, the sword pierces the crippled acupuncture point. Return to origin martial arts, Zhong Yuan's contributions are great. Lu Gongyuan spoke in a deep voice. To cultivate this cultivation technique, one must first cripple one's martial arts. This first step would cause 99% of people to shrink back. In the past, I also had the thought of cultivating this cultivation technique, but in the end, I didn't have the courage to take this step and gamble on a slim chance. Right now, this cultivation technique is your last chance, and also the Azure Water Sword sect's last chance. It all depends on whether or not you can grasp it. Remember, the name of this cultivation technique is 10,000 Sword Return Sect. Chapter 262. Azure Billow Sword Sect and Shen Bai had bet their last bit of luck on this gamble. The atmosphere was solemn and stirring. Compared to Azure Billow Sword Sect, the Evil Extreme Sect, which also had elite disciples killed by Chu Xiu, was much more relaxed. The Evil Extreme Sect was one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, but because of its relationship with the Kunlun Devil cult, it was extremely low-key. Although the Evil Extreme Sect wasn't located in the deepest north like the Drifting Snow City, it was still considered close to the Drifting Snow City. With such a neighbor, the Evil Extreme Sect could be said to be even more low-key in recent years. At this time, in a side hall of the Evil Zenith Sect, a bare-chested, handsome young martial artist was sitting cross-legged on the ground, cultivating. There was a strange blood-red dragon tattoo on his chest, and as he circulated his true chi, the blood-red dragon's body actually swelled up and down in accordance with his breathing rhythm. It was a very strange sight. In his hand, there was also a blood-red long spear. The entire body of the spear was carved into the shape of a dragon's body. The dragon's tail was the spear's tip, and the dragon's head was the spear's handle. It looked slightly sinister. At this moment, a martial artist shrouded in a black robe pushed open the door and entered. The man immediately opened his eyes. The strangest thing was that his pupils were actually vertical at this moment, and they were also a strange blood-red color, like some kind of snake. But in an instant, they returned to normal. Knocking on the door is a good habit. If you can't learn it, I will use my blood dragon to teach you well. The black-robed martial artist laughed awkwardly. Yi Tianxie, don't be ungrateful. I am here to give you information. One good news, one bad news, which one do you want to hear first? Seeing Yi Tianxie's eyes turning red again, and his pupils starting to vertical, the martial artist quickly said, all right, I will not keep you in suspense. The good news is that during the Divine Weapon Conference, those guys from Phaseless Demon Sect jumped out to cause trouble again. They wanted to seize the Hidden Sword Villa's Devil Sword Eternal Yearning, but in the end, it ended in a lose-lose situation. Yi Tianxie said lightly, this is good news for the sect, but what kind of good news is it for me? They were both demonic sects, but the Evil Extreme Sect was a traitor of the former Kunlun Devil Cult, while the Phaseless Demon Sect was a loyal follower of the former Kunlun Devil Cult. Naturally, the two of them were mortal enemies. The black-robed man laughed and said, the sect has spent so much to nurture you. Isn't the good news of the sect also good news for you? Don't be so calculative. But there's also bad news. Tong Kaitai, the devil hunter you chose to block the bullet, is dead. He died in the hands of Chu Xiu, the young hero of the Guanzhong torture room. Yi Tianxie's expression did not change when he heard this. He just said lightly, he died so soon? He's really useless. I thought he could at least hold on for a while. But this guy's brain is not very good. If the Evil Extreme Sect did not save him, I'm afraid he would have been killed by the Taoist master abode of Mount Longhu long ago. When Tong Kaitai appeared at the God Weapon Conference, most people in the Jianghu thought that the Evil Extreme Sect had really declined. After so many years of silence, they had not nurtured any outstanding talents. They actually wanted to recruit a guy like Tong Kaitai, who had a bad reputation and was even a wandering martial artist, to keep up appearances. But in reality, the Evil Extreme Sect had been enduring all these years. For the Evil Extreme Sect, they no longer cared about the reputation of the outside world. The only thing that mattered was their own development. These years, the demonic path had been on the decline. Their Evil Extreme Sect was close to the Temple of Light and the fluttering snow city of the far north. They were all in the northern Yenland, so it was better for them to keep a low profile. For example, the Phaseless Demon Sect had been stubbornly loyal to the long-gone Kunlun Devil Cult. What was the result? Didn't they still get chased around like stray dogs and everyone wanted to beat them up? Tong Kaitai was just a smokescreen thrown out by the Evil Extreme Sect to make the outside world think that the Evil Extreme Sect was very weak. But they could not let go of their pride, so they found someone like this to keep up appearances. The black-robed man shook his head and said, I don't want to say this, but are you really not interested in the Longhu leaderboard? Others may not know, but I know that if you come out of seclusion, you can definitely compete with the Sword Chief, Fang Qi Shao, and the little celestial master, Zhang Qingzhen. The expression on Yi Tianxie's face did not change at all. He only said calmly, I will come out of seclusion to compete with them sooner or later. But not now, but in the future. The Longhu leaderboard is just something wind-sweeping tower made up to fool those idiots. Do people really take this ranking seriously? Only those who can live to advance from the Longhu leaderboard will have the right to compete with me in the future. Otherwise, they will be like that idiot Tong Kai. So what if they rise to the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard? Even if they deserve to die, they will still die. But after all, he was thrown out by my omniscient sect as a facade, and he was also personally chosen by me. Now that he is dead, my omniscient sect can't do nothing. Go and tell the sect master to find an opportunity to cause some trouble for the Guanzhong torture room or Chu Xiu. It will be enough to make our omniscient sect's presence known. Normally speaking, if a disciple dared to order the sect master to do something, it would simply be disgraceful. But in the omniscient sect, this kind of thing was very normal. Yi Tianxia's identity was special, and they were already used to it. Therefore, the black-robed man simply nodded and immediately retreated. At this moment, in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu didn't know what happened in the Azure Billow Sword sect or the Omniscient sect. After drinking with Chu Yuanxing for an entire night, he came to report to Guan Xiu about the Divine Weapon Convention the next day. In the main hall's guest hall, Chu Xiu was waiting. Guan Xiu still had to deal with some official matters before coming over. This wasn't Guan Xiu purposely giving Chu Xiu the cold shoulder, but it was his habit. As long as there wasn't a huge mess, his routine wouldn't change. Right at this moment, a fragrant wind drifted over from the hall. Mei Qinglian leisurely walked over and placed a cup of tea in front of Chu Xiu. She softly said, "Master will be here in a while. Official Chu, please wait for a moment." Chu Xiu hurriedly stood up and cupped his hands. "Sorry to trouble, madam." Chu Xiu had never underestimated this woman. She was Guan Xiu's wife. Although she didn't have any authority in the Guanzhong torture room, as long as she whispered pillow talk into Guan Xiu's ear, it would affect a lot of things. It was obvious from the attitude of Wei Juduan and the other torture officers. They were very cautious with Mei Qinglian. At this moment, Mei Qinglian suddenly took a step closer to Chu Xiu. Her cold face suddenly bloomed with a hint of a smile. Her entire body was filled with a mature charm, but her expression had always been cold and indifferent. At this moment, when she smiled, it was even more bewitching. If it wasn't for the fact that Chu Xiu had high attainments in the soul-extinguishing technique and his strong mental strength, he would probably have made a fool of himself. Official Chu represented the Guanzhong torture room in the God Weapon Conference this time. "You have brought glory to the Guanzhong torture room. What is a cup of tea? I am just a woman. I want to do my best for the torture hall, but I can't find the opportunity." Chu Xiu's expression didn't change as he said, "There are only the strong and the weak in the pugilistic world. There is no distinction between men and women. I met a lady at the God Weapon Conference this time. Although she is a woman, she is stronger than most men." "Who is she?" Mei Qinglian's eyes twinkled. Her eyes were filled with charm and charm. It was very alluring. "Wu County's Luo family, Luo Feiheng." Chu Xiu took half a step back. He picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. Mei Qinglian took the opportunity to sit on the chair beside Chu Xiu. She sighed and said, "Luo Feiheng? I have heard of her. This little sister is very impressive. Unfortunately, she was born in the wrong place." Sometimes women are like this. Their hearts are higher than the sky, but their lives are thinner than paper. If you want to fight for it, if you want to seize it, it is 100 or even 1,000 times more difficult than you men. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said lightly, "Where there is a will, there is a way. Heaven will not disappoint those who work hard. What I am afraid of is not the difficulty, but the lack of the heart." At this time, Mei Qinglian suddenly smiled and said, "Well said. No wonder Official Chu has such strength at such a young age. All right, I heard that Official Chu obtained a divine weapon forged by Grandmaster Mo Yizi. Can I have a look at it?" Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. However, he still untied the heavenly demon dance from his waist and placed it in front of Mei Qinglian. He said, "There was a mishap in the God Weapon Convention. This saber I obtained is not a divine weapon. It is only a 6th revolution precious weapon." Mei Qinglian stretched out her slender hand and gently stroked the saber. Her eyes revealed a trace of confusion. However, when he saw this, Chu Xiu's eyes shone with a strange light. The heavenly demon dance was a demonic murderous weapon. When it was forged, Chu Xiu and the others were first fused with the sharp qi from the heavenly demon order and the pure devil qi from the heavenly demon order. Finally, it even fused with Chu Xiu's blood qi. It could be said that this was a standard demonic murderous weapon. Not to mention an ordinary person, even a Xiantian realm martial artist would have their fingers cut by the sharp evil qi from the heavenly demon dance if they carelessly touched it. But now, Mei Qinglian was caressing the heavenly demon dance with ease. There was not the slightest abnormality on her hand. There was also no burst of true qi. What did this mean? It meant that the strength of her body was astonishing. Just her body alone was stronger than the inner force of a Xiantian realm martial artist. However, in Chu Xiu's impression, no one had ever said that Mei Qinglian knew martial arts. No one had ever said that she did not know martial arts. In any case, Chu Xiu could not see through her. In Chu Xiu's eyes, she was just an ordinary person. What's the name of this saber? Mei Qinglian suddenly asked. Heavenly Demon Dance. Mei Qinglian put down the saber and chuckled. Heavenly Demon Dance? That's a good name. It's a saber forged from the Heavenly Demon Order of the Kunlun Devil Cult. Now, it's named after the Heavenly Demon. It's quite appropriate. However, the Kunlun Devil Cult is a taboo in Jianghu. Official Chu is using such a strong demonic weapon. Isn't he afraid of being criticized by others? Mei Qinglian raised her beautiful eyes and stared at Chu Xiu without blinking. Chapter 263. When Mei Qinglian asked about the Kunlun Devil Cult, a strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. Mei Qinglian should know the status of the Kunlun Devil Cult in Jianghu. It was a little sensitive. Only close friends would discuss this kind of thing. He and Mei Qinglian didn't seem to be that close, right? However, Chu Xiu didn't have any scruples. He already treated the demonic dance as his weapon. What else was there to be scruples about? Therefore, Chu Xiu said directly, "It's just a weapon. What's there to criticize?" It should be known that a big sect like the Hidden Sword Villa dared to secretly restore one of the 3 devil weapons of the Kunlun Devil Cult, the Devil Sword Everlasting Yearning. From this matter, it could be seen what kind of attitude the Jianghu had toward the Devil Cult. To put it bluntly, they were not afraid of the Kunlun Devil Cult. They were just afraid of a powerful existence that could crush them at will. Everyone wanted to be the supreme in the world. Everyone wanted to be that supreme existence. No one was willing to be suppressed by someone. However, these former members of the Kunlun Devil Cult did it. In order to prevent the fear of the past from returning to their hearts, they tried their best to kill everything related to the Kunlun Devil Cult. Therefore, they were not afraid of the Kunlun Devil Cult, but an existence that was stronger than them. The people of Jianghu have already seen how I got this saber. With the Devil Sword Everlasting Yearning in front of me, this small problem of mine is nothing. Mei Qinglian looked at Chu Xiu with a strange look. She was about to say something when there were footsteps coming from outside. Mei Qinglian immediately stood up and moved away from Chu Xiu. Guanxiu walked in and saw Mei Qinglian. He said softly, "Madam, why are you here?" Mei Qinglian said angrily, "It's all because of you, master." Official Chu represented the Guanzhong torture room to make a name for himself in Jianghu and made a great contribution, but you left him hanging here. What are you talking about? I'm afraid that outsiders might think that the Guanzhong torture room is neglecting a hero, so I can only come here to entertain you. Guanxiu smiled and said, "Furin is still the most attentive." Guanxiu turned around and said to Chu Xiu, "Chu Xiu, don't take it to heart. There have been a few matters in the punishment hall lately, so I made you wait." Chu Xiu hurriedly said, "Hall master is very busy every day. A little wait is nothing." Guanxiu nodded in satisfaction. She was afraid that Chu Xiu would become arrogant because he had made a great contribution this time. Now, it seemed that Chu Xiu was very clear-headed. The Guanzhong torture room's system determined that no matter how outstanding a person was, he would not receive preferential treatment in the Guanzhong torture room. Everything could only be determined by merit. Although this made the overall standard of the Guanzhong torture room not bad, it also caused some outstanding people to feel that it was unfair in the Guanzhong torture room. After all, in the outside world, a talent like Chu Xiu might not be nurtured with all the resources of a sect, but he would at least receive preferential treatment. At this moment, Mei Qinglian also said, "If you want to talk about serious matters, a woman like me will not understand, so I won't interfere." As she spoke, Mei Qinglian also left leisurely. However, when she passed by Chu Xiu, she glanced at Chu Xiu. Her gaze seemed to have a hidden meaning. Chu Xiu lowered his head and cupped his hands. "Take care, friend." Guan Xiu gestured for Chu Xiu to sit down and said, "Tell me everything about the God Weapon Conference. Be more detailed." Chu Xiu nodded and told Guan Xiu all the information in detail. After listening, Guan Xiu shook her head and said, "I didn't expect there to be such an inside story in this God Weapon Conference." The Hidden Sword Villa was indeed a little impatient this time. The demonic nature in the 9 transformation demonic weapon is hard to get rid of. Even if the phaseless demon sect did not cause trouble this time, I reckon that the Hidden Sword Villa would not be able to completely restore the demonic longing sword and erase the demonic nature on it. The Hidden Sword Villa is a sword sect, but their dedication to the sword has already surpassed the sword principle itself. This is an extreme path. In my opinion, it has already gone astray. Chu Xiu nodded and did not say anything. However, he had a guess in his heart. If it were not for him, the Hidden Sword Villa would not have taken out the Longing Sword so early. Because of his butterfly effect, it caused the Sky Devil Order fragment to fall into the hands of the Hidden Sword Villa. This caused the Hidden Sword Villa to have a new idea and finally set up such a scheme to secretly restore the demonic sword during the God Weapon Conference. If it were not for Chu Xiu, the Hidden Sword Villa might have continued to keep the demonic sword. After they thought of a safe method, they would then restore the demonic sword. After asking Chu Xiu a few more questions, Guan Xiu spoke in a deep voice. "The Guanzhong torture room will help you settle the trouble you caused during the God Weapon Conference. The people from the Sword Royal City have already retreated. As for the Azure Water Sword sect, even if Lu Gongyuan comes personally, I am not afraid. As for the Northern Plains Evil Extreme sect, the Evil Dao is now in a decline. Even if you kill the young expert that they pushed out to maintain their image, they will not dare to be too brazen. At most, it will be a symbolic revenge. Don't worry about it. But you have to remember clearly that the Guanzhong torture room will help you deal with this matter because you have a mission from the Guanzhong torture room. But if you dare to act recklessly and cause any trouble because of this matter, according to the rules of the Guanzhong torture room, you will be punished severely." At the end of her speech, Guan Xiu also gave Chu Xiu a little warning. Chu Xiu cupped his fist and said, "Hall Master, rest assured. This subordinate knows his limits." Guan Xiu nodded and said, "As long as you know your limits. This time, you should be rewarded for your meritorious service. But according to the rules, the resources given by the disciplinary hall are too little for you. You shouldn't be interested in it." Chu Xiu secretly curled his lips. Guan Xiu also knew that the salary and rewards of the Guanzhong torture room were pitifully little. But due to various reasons he probably wouldn't change it in a short period of time. Guan Xiu continued, "So this time, you still have to be rewarded. At the same time, I will also give you an additional identity." With that, Guan Xiu gave Chu Xiu a token. Aside from the sword and saber logo of the Guanzhong torture room, there were also the words Criminal Investigation Division and a 7. From today onwards, besides being the Guanxi Patrol, you are also a 7th grade secret agent of the Criminal Investigation Division. Generally, only martial artists at the 5 Qis forming the Origin Realm can be conferred the qualifications of a 7th grade secret agent. Above that, the 8th grade secret agent is the elite of the 5 Qis forming the Origin Realm. At the same time, they are also the deputy chiefs of the Criminal Investigation Division. The 9th grade secret agent is the pinnacle, and they are also the chiefs of the Criminal Investigation Division. Right now, your 7th grade secret agent is just an identity. It doesn't belong to any of the chiefs of the Criminal Investigation Division. But as long as you have a need, you can mobilize any secret agent under the rank of 7th grade. To be precise, your current position is far more powerful than your position as the patrol of the Jianghu Prefecture. Guan Xiu was really generous this time. Even Chu Xiu didn't expect that Guan Xiu's reward would be a portion of the authority of the Criminal Investigation Division. Actually, thinking about it carefully, Guan Xiu didn't seem to be stingy. Since the establishment of the Guanzhong torture room, Guan Xiu had been more daring to delegate authority. Whether it was the disciplinary officer or a patrol like Chu Xiu, the authority in their hands wasn't small. Chu Xiu of the Criminal Investigation Division didn't know much about it, but he believed that it wouldn't be small. Chu Xiu put away the token and immediately cupped his hands at Guan Xiu. "Thank you, Hall Master." Guan Xiu waved her hand and said, "All right, I'm done here. You can go back to Guanxi to report." Chu Xiu nodded. After bidding farewell, he immediately returned to the Jianghu prefecture. The news of Chu Xiu's return had long spread throughout the Guangzhong torture room. When Chu Xiu returned to the Jianghu prefecture, the Ghost Hand Monarch, Du Guangzhong, and other subordinates were waiting at the entrance of the patrol hall to welcome him. When they saw Chu Xiu appear, everyone immediately cupped their hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Congratulations on becoming famous in the underworld and shaking the underworld." Chu Xiu's performance at the God Weapon Conference had long spread throughout the underworld through the anemophilia. Naturally, they knew about it long ago. After hearing this news, whether it was Du Guangzhong, the Ghost Hand Monarch, or the others, they were naturally very happy. Since they had already pledged their allegiance to Chu Xiu, their relationship with Chu Xiu was bound to be one of them. Now that Chu Xiu was famous in the underworld, and he was even stronger, they, as his subordinates, were naturally honored. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "All right, don't be so mushy. I'm famous in the underworld, but it's probably not something good. As for shaking the underworld, don't even talk about it. Even martial Dao masters don't dare to say that. If I say it now, I'm afraid I'll be laughed at." After teasing for a while, Chu Xiu asked everyone about the movements in the Jianghu prefecture. According to the reports of the Ghost Hand Monarch and the others, the Jianghu prefecture was very peaceful during the time he was away. The business that had been affected previously had completely returned to normal after the Ghost King sect incident. Moreover, Chu Xiu's subordinates, Wolf King and Fire Slave, had also stepped into the physical invulnerability realm. Previously, these two people were already at the peak of the inner invulnerability realm. However, when they were in the Blue Dragon Society, their missions were too tight. The time they spent on missions was actually longer than the time they spent on cultivation. Therefore, they had been stuck in this realm and had not broken through. After pledging their allegiance to Chu Xiu, they actually didn't have too many opportunities to fight. With free time and cultivation resources, these two people had naturally stepped into the physical invulnerability realm. As for Tangya and Yen Bugue, their strength had not changed much. After all, if they were to break through, they would be in the three-flower realm. This realm did not rely on the accumulation of internal force, but on enlightenment. For Chu Xiu to be able to step into the three-flower realm this time, he had to thank Taoist Xian Cheng of the Water Cloud Temple for preaching. The other reason was that he had to thank Yen Tingting. If it weren't for that 1-against-100 battle, Chu Xiu wouldn't have been able to step into the three-flower realm before the God Armament Conference. If he was only in the physical invulnerability realm, he wouldn't have been able to cause so much trouble at the God Armament Conference. Therefore, this time, Yen Tingting had really made Chu Xiu a success. At this time, Du Guangzhong suddenly said, "Sir, although the Jianghu prefecture has been peaceful during this time, there have been some personnel changes in the Guanxi area." Chapter 264. Hearing Du Guangzhong say that the people in Guanxi had changed, Chu Xiu vaguely guessed something. He asked, "What happened?" Du Guangzhong said, "The inspector of Anzhou, Kai Jingsheng's old injury has relapsed. It seems to be serious, to the point that he cannot continue to be an inspector. So half a month ago, Kai Jingsheng resigned from his position as the in-state's patrol inspector and sold all his assets to head to West Chu. I heard that he is going to find the famous West Chu doctor, Anger Yama, Feng Buping, to treat him." Chu Xiu nodded. He knew this was the case. Previously, during the competition in the Guangzhong torture room, Wei Juduan had told him that Kai Jingsheng's old injury had relapsed and he would not be able to last much longer. He would have to give up his position as inspector. During the martial arts competition, Chu Xiu had crippled Li Tianhao and helped Wei Juduan vent his anger. Thus, the two prefectures under Kai Jingsheng's command were now his. Chu Xiu could also become the most powerful patrol inspector in the Guanxi region. Right now, the Shangzhou Prefecture Inspector Yang Ling was Wei Juduan's adopted son on the surface and only loyal to Wei Juduan. But in reality, he was Chu Xiu's man. This way, a small half of the power in Guanxi was in Chu Xiu's hands. But Du Guangzhong continued, Kai Jingsheng has 2 state prefectures under his command. He has not managed the Anzhou prefecture, and the other spirit state prefecture has been given to a newly joined Guangzhong Torture Hall 3-flower realm martial practitioner, Wei Chongling, to manage. This matter dissatisfied the other inspectors. Sir, when you joined the Guangzhong torture room, you were recommended by Sir Chu Yuanxing, and you were personally appointed by the hall master. Wei Chongling had no position. But under the insistence of official Wei Jieduan, the other people could only endure even if they were dissatisfied. This Wei Chongling has been in the Anzhou prefecture for a while now, and has used the power of the 9 Plains Wei family to stabilize the situation in the Anzhou prefecture. He can be said to have secured his position. After Du Guangzhong finished speaking, he realized that Chu Xiu's expression had suddenly turned gloomy. His expression was frighteningly cold. This scene gave Du Guangzhong a fright. Did he say something wrong? Du Guangzhong asked cautiously, Sir, what's wrong? Chu Xiu said coldly, It's nothing. I was just fooled once. This time, Chu Xiu was indeed fooled by Wei Jieduan. The only thing he didn't expect was that Wei Jieduan could be so shameless. Chu Xiu knew Wei Jieduan's personality. Last time, Chu Xiu did not want Wei Hanshan's Shangzhou prefecture and gave it to Yangling because he knew that Wei Jieduan did not want him to grow. But this time, Wei Jieduan had said that he would help him cripple Li Tianhao and gain face for him. The 2 prefectures under Kai Jingsheng's command would be his. He hadn't expected Wei Jieduan to change his mind after the matter. In front of Chu Xiu, no matter what, Wei Jieduan was still his superior. He was also a great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm. Yet he was playing this game with his subordinate. This was no longer a shameful matter. Instead, it would cause his subordinates to be divided. It could only be said that Chu Xiu had overestimated Wei Jieduan's shamelessness. Or rather, Wei Jieduan did not care about anything now. As long as there were benefits, he dared to sell anything. Everyone present was on the same side, so Chu Xiu did not hide it and directly told everyone about this matter. This caused Du Guangzhong and the others to look at each other. To be honest, there were not many people who could do what Wei Jieduan did. If such a person established a sect, the sect's strength would definitely weaken as it developed. But the problem was that Wei Jieduan was now the disciplinary officer. Even if he was shameless and did not keep his word, the others could not do anything about it. After all, what Wei Jieduan had given Chu Xiu was only a verbal promise. Moreover, even if it was a written promise, it would be useless. Could Chu Xiu take the written promise to Guanxiu to reason things out? That would be the behavior of an idiot. Was the position of patrol something that could be casually given out in a bet? Were they treating the Guangzhong torture room as a joke? At that time, both Wei Jieduan and Chu Xiu would be punished. However, they were certain that Chu Xiu would not let this matter rest just like that. He did not have the habit of swallowing his grievances, nor did he have the habit of swallowing his grievances. Chu Xiu asked with a dark expression, You say that Wei Chongling is from the 9 Plains Wei family? Is it Wei Hanshan's 9 Plains Wei family? Du Guangzhong nodded and said, Yes, that 9 Plains Wei family. Previously, Chu Xiu had heard Du Guangzhong say that Wei Hanshan seemed to be the illegitimate child of the Guanxi 9 Plains Wei family. He was able to sit in the position of patrol inspector partly due to the support of the 9 Plains Wei family. Later, when Chu Xiu killed Wei Hanshan, the 9 Plains Wei family did not jump out to make trouble for him. Now, it seemed that the 9 Plains Wei family did not care about the death of an illegitimate child of Wei Hanshan. Or in their view, this matter had nothing to do with Chu Xiu. But now that Wei Hanshan was dead, the 9 Plains Wei family wanted to raise another person to enter the Guangzhong torture room. Coincidentally, Kai Jingsheng's old injuries had relapsed and gave them a chance. At this time, a Jianghu constable knocked on the door. He said that Wei Jieduan had sent news that Chu Xiu had returned and wanted Chu Xiu to go over. Chu Xiu sneered upon hearing this. It seems that official Wei has been paying attention to me at all times. This time, I want to see what excuse Wei Juduan, that old bastard, will come up with. Du Guangzhong and the others did not seem to hear Chu Xiu use the term old bastard to describe Wei Juduan. With Chu Xiu's temper, if he had the power, it would be normal for him to kill Wei Juduan on the spot. After changing his clothes, Chu Xiu went directly to the Guanxi branch. At this time, Ying Prefecture's Inspector Fang Hua, Lin Prefecture's Inspector Sidu Xing, Lin Prefecture's Inspector Jiang Taoran, and Yang Ling were all there. Seeing Chu Xiu enter, the four of them stood up and greeted Chu Xiu. They congratulated Chu Xiu for bringing glory to the Guangzhong torture room at the God Weapon Conference and for entering the top 10 of the Longhu list. In the past, when Chu Xiu first came to Guanxi, he was just an inspector without any foundation. But now, Chu Xiu was the dazzling #1 among the younger generation of the Guangzhong torture room. Even Guan Xiyu's personal disciple, Yu Qi, was ranked below Chu Xiu. Back then, they could rely on their seniority to ignore Chu Xiu. But now, they had to take the initiative to greet Chu Xiu. Among them, Jiang Taoran also had the strength of the Three-Flower Realm, but how could an ordinary Three-Flower Realm warrior like him compare to Chu Xiu, who was in the top 10 of the Longhu list? However, at this time, Chu Xiu's expression was a little ugly. In fact, although Chu Xiu was angry, it was easy for him to not show his emotions. His expression was just for Wei Juduan to see. After exchanging a few words with the crowd, Wei Juduan also walked in with a Three-Flower Realm warrior. This Three-Flower Realm warrior was about 40 years old and had a small mustache. After seeing Chu Xiu, a strange look appeared in his eyes, but he did not say anything. Everyone stood up and said in unison, "Greetings, sir." Wei Juduan looked at Chu Xiu with a slightly unnatural gaze. He waved his hand and said, "All right, sit down. I called everyone here today mainly to welcome Chu Xiu." He represented the Guangzhong torture room in the God Weapon Conference. In the outside world, this is the glory of the Guangzhong torture room, but in the Guangzhong torture room, it is also the glory of the Guanxi region. As for the second reason, there is a new inspector in the Guanxi region, Wei Changling. He will take over Kai Jingsheng's position. At that time, you Chu Xiu were in Eastern Qi, so you did not have the time to meet him. Today is a good time to make up for it. From now on, you will be colleagues, and you must work together sincerely. However, at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly raised his hand and said, "Sir, this is not urgent. I still have some matters regarding this God Weapon Conference that I want to report to you alone." Wei Juduan frowned, but since Chu Xiu had said so, he could only say, "All right, then come in with me." After bringing Chu Xiu into a private secret room, Wei Juduan asked, "What do you want to say?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Do you not know what I want to say, Sir Wei? Why are the two state capitals that should belong to me now in Wei Changling's hands?" Feeling the unfriendliness in Chu Xiu's tone, Wei Juduan snorted coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, are you questioning me?" Chu Xiu said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "This subordinate just wants justice." Seeing Chu Xiu's attitude, Wei Juduan was furious, but he did not act out on the spot. Right now, Chu Xiu's status was different. It could be said that Chu Xiu was not just an inspector of Guanxi, but the top person of the younger generation of the Guangzhong torture room. He represented the Guangzhong torture room in the Jianghu. If Wei Juduan dared to punish Chu Xiu at this time, or take away his position, this kind of mistreatment of a meritorious official would alarm Guan Xiu. In order to prevent the people of the Guangzhong torture room from being dissatisfied, it would be Wei Juduan's bad luck then. Wei Juduan did not want to cause trouble when he was about to retire, so he sighed and said, "Chu Xiu, you have to understand my difficulties. Do you think I want to keep Wei Changling? I was forced to do so." Wei Hanshan was the illegitimate child of the Nine Crystal Wei family. Although he was only an illegitimate child, the Nine Crystal Wei family had invested a lot in him. Now that Wei Hanshan was dead, how could the Nine Crystal Wei family be willing to accept it? You do not know, in the past, you and Wei Hanshan were at odds. In reality, the Wei family had prepared to deal with you, but I stopped them. Later, the Wei family proposed a condition for me to take out one of Kai Jingsheng's state capitals and support a direct descendant of the Wei family to be the inspector. I agreed to their conditions so the Wei family did not come to make trouble for you. Otherwise, do you think the Wei family would be so peaceful? At this point, Wei Judwan's tone changed to one of earnest persuasion. However, you don't need to be unwilling. I only gave the Wei family a prefecture. Kai Jingsheng still has another prefecture under his command. That is yours. Chapter 265. Wei Judwan's words were dignified, but in reality, even an idiot would not believe them. If the Nine Plains Wei family wanted to make trouble for Chu Xiu, then let them. Would Chu Xiu be afraid of the Nine Plains Wei family? While the Nine Plains Wei family was a large Guanxi family, do not forget that this was Guanzhong, the Guanzhong of the Guanzhong torture room. Even when Wei Changling was the inspector, news of Chu Xiu at the God Weapon Conference had not yet spread. But he had defeated a group of young experts of the Guanzhong torture room at the main hall and became the face of the Guanzhong torture room. Would the Guanzhong torture room watch as a face like Chu Xiu was bullied by the local martial arts factions? Even if Wei Judwan did not care, Guanxiu would care. To put it bluntly, the Nine Plains Wei family must have offered something that Wei Judwan couldn't refuse. That was why Wei Judwan completely threw away his reputation and face and handed over Kai Jingsheng's position to the Wei family. Chu Xiu said gravely, "But Darren, this subordinate does not accept this. Last time, you wanted to give Wei Hanshan's Shangzhou government to Yang Ling, and I agreed. Yang Ling is your adopted son, and I gave you face. But this time, I won Kai Jingsheng's 2 prefectures with my own hands. Why should I give them away?" Wei Judwan snorted coldly. "Chu Xiu, you have to think of the big picture. The Wei family is a large Guanxi family. If you give them the position of inspector, they will be more stable. Do you have to make a big deal out of this matter?" At this point, Wei Judwan slowed down his tone and said, "Chu Xiu, you have to set your sights further. Right now, you have both fame and merit. Among the patrol envoys under me, your strength and advantage are the strongest. Don't worry, you've been wrong this time, but I won't forget you. After I retire in a few years, when your foundation and strength have stabilized, I'll recommend you to the higher-ups and let you become the disciplinary officer. Yang Ling is my godson, and my connections are all with Yang Ling. When the time comes, I will let Yang Ling assist you, and I guarantee that you will be able to smoothly sit in your position as the disciplinary officer." As soon as he said that, Chu Xiu sneered in his heart. Wei Judwan did not know that Yang Ling had already completely sided with Chu Xiu. He had said these words to Yang Ling not long ago. However, at that time, he told Yang Ling that Chu Xiu would assist Yang Ling. Now, it was naturally Yang Ling who would assist him. Although Chu Xiu was disdainful in his heart, he still put on a look of unwillingness and resignation. He lowered his head and said with a hint of unwillingness, "This subordinate obeys." Seeing Chu Xiu's appearance, Wei Judwan nodded in satisfaction. As long as he was still the disciplinary officer, he could firmly suppress Chu Xiu. However, he did not see a hint of coldness in Chu Xiu's eyes when he lowered his head. Now was not the time to fall out, but sooner or later, Chu Xiu would take back everything he deserved. At that time, he would probably have to collect some interest. When Wei Judwan and Chu Xiu walked out with gloomy expressions, the inspectors present all had different expressions. They did not know about the agreement between Wei Judwan and Chu Xiu. However, with Chu Xiu's contributions this time, there was nothing wrong with handing over the 2 prefectures under Kai Jingsheng to Chu Xiu to manage. But now, it seemed that Wei Judwan did not have such plans. The people present did not say anything. Other than Yang Ling, who was Chu Xiu's subordinate, the others were all old people of the Guanxi Inspector Hall. They had a general understanding of Wei Judwan's personality. Moreover, to put it in a dark way, they did not feel good about letting a young inspector like Chu Xiu ride over their heads. Hence, no one said anything at that moment. Wei Judwan waved his hand and said, "All right, let's stop here. Starting today, Wei Changling will manage Spirit State, and Chu Xiu will manage Anzhou. Disperse." Wei Changling was backed by the Nine Plains Wei family. He had stabilized his position as the Spirit State Inspector. No one said anything. With Chu Xiu's current strength and achievements, no one would say anything if he were to manage the prefecture. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement and left. When they reached the door of the branch hall, Wei Changling walked next to Chu Xiu and said in a low voice, "Official Chu seems very unhappy." In reality, the one who should be unhappy is the Nine Plains Wei family. Does official Chu know how much effort the Nine Plains Wei family spent to nurture Wei Hanshan? In the end, Wei Hanshan died prematurely. The Wei family spent a great deal of money to let me take the position of inspector. As for how Wei Hanshan died in the past, my Wei clan will not pursue it. However, my Wei clan hopes that Lord Chu can remember that in the future, we will mind our own business. I am not that illegitimate son of Wei Hanshan, and my Wei clan does not wish to produce a third patrol inspector. Wei Changling's tone was slightly threatening. Of course, in his view, this was not a threat, but a compromise of the Wei family. The evidence of how Wei Hanshan had died back then was right there. The Wei family could not think of reversing the verdict. But back then, Wei Hanshan had returned to the Wei family to ask for help in order to deal with Chu Xiu. But the Wei family had just started preparing when Wei Hanshan died, and died in front of Chu Xiu. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? In any case, the Wei family did not believe it. As a major Guanxi family, and not considering the Guanzhong torture room headquarters, the Nine Plains Wei family could even challenge Wei Juduan. So when they first learned of the news, the Nine Plains Wei family had planned to teach Chu Xiu a lesson. But later, they learned that Chu Xiu had displayed such power at the God Weapon Conference. When he returned to the Guanzhong torture room, his status would rise. While the Nine Plains Wei family would not fear Chu Xiu, they could not bully Chu Xiu like they bullied other people. So the Nine Plains Wei family changed their plans and reconciled with Chu Xiu. Of course, in Wei Changling's view, there was nothing wrong with his tone. The Wei family just wanted to reconcile with Chu Xiu and not admit defeat. Just like Wei Changling said, from now on, they would not interfere with each other's business. But Wei Changling's words were ear-piercing in Chu Xiu's ears. Chu Xiu turned his head and smiled coldly. "Do not pursue this matter? Who does the Wei family think you are that you qualify to pursue me? Not interfering with each other's business? Do you qualify?" Wei Changling stilled. He had not expected Chu Xiu to have such an attitude. Wei Changling said coldly, "Chu Xiu, don't be so shameless." This time, Chu Xiu was not in the mood to waste words with him. He was not in a good mood to begin with. This idiot had come up to him and said such nonsense. He was seeking death. So Chu Xiu formed a fist seal, turned and threw a great Vajra-wheel seal. Immediately, blinding Buddhist light erupted. The powerful presence attracted the attention of Jiang Taoran and the others. Wei Changling had not expected Chu Xiu to suddenly attack him. He hurriedly moved to block, but his own energy was easily crushed by Chu Xiu's great Vajra-wheel seal. He was sent flying by the seal and vomited blood. Chu Xiu's hand formed the internal binding seal. His body moved, and he immediately caught up to Wei Changling, who had been thrown away. He grabbed his neck, sealed the other's energy, and lifted him up. He said coldly, "The most important thing for a person is to know themselves. I am the strongest of the younger generation of Guanzhong Torture Hall. I have just earned a reputation for the torture hall in the Jianghu and gained face. You, an idiot trash, dares to talk to me. Are you worthy? Go tell your Nine Plains Wei family that if you want to talk to me, send someone qualified first. You are far from qualified." As he finished speaking, Chu Xiu threw Wei Changling to the side like a dead dog. This made the Jianghu constables of the Guanxi branch speechless. They thought to themselves that this official Chu was indeed a famous figure in the Jianghu. They were both in the three-flower realm, but Wei Changling could not withstand a single blow from Chu Xiu. Jiang Taoran and the others looked at each other and turned to leave as if they had not seen anything. Wei Changling, that idiot, did not know the situation and ran to provoke Chu Xiu at this time. He was looking for death. But they also thought to themselves, after the God Weapon Conference, Chu Xiu's strength had increased greatly, and his temper had also increased greatly. He dared to fight at the gates of the Guanxi branch. Was he not afraid of Wei Juduan's punishment? In reality, Chu Xiu was not afraid. Moreover, from the time Chu Xiu had attacked until now, with Wei Juduan's strength, he had sensed everything. But he had not shown himself. He pretended to be deaf and dumb, as though he had not seen anything. The reason was simple. He was in the wrong today. He had given the provincial government that should have belonged to Chu Xiu to Wei Changling. But now, Wei Changling had recklessly provoked Chu Xiu. He deserved to be taught a lesson. Wei Juduan had received benefits from the Wei family, but those benefits were only enough for him to help Wei Changling to the position of inspector. It was not enough for him to stand on Wei Changling's side and brazenly protect him. Also, after today's matter, Chu Xiu would not be in a good mood. Was it not right for him to vent his anger? As long as Chu Xiu was not crazy enough to kill Wei Changling on the spot, Wei Juduan would not appear. Wei Changling lay on the ground. Feeling the gazes of the Guanzhong torture room martial practitioners around him, his face burned. He wanted to find a crack in the ground to hide in. Being humiliated by Chu Xiu in front of everyone, it could be said that he had lost all face as the new patrol inspector. Chu Xiu, just you wait. Wei Changling struggled to climb up. He did not have the face to stay here. He returned to his Spirit State Prefecture and wrote a letter to the Nine Plains Wei family to ask for help. Right now, he could only hope that the family would appear to help him. Otherwise, he really could not do anything to Chu Xiu. In terms of status, while he and Chu Xiu were both inspectors, Chu Xiu's present strength and influence could be said to be the strongest of all the inspectors. Also, in the entire Guanzhong torture room, he was just a nobody. Chu Xiu was the top person of the younger generation in Guanzhong torture room. He had just shown the might of Guanzhong torture room and was the face of Guanzhong torture room. As for Chu Xiu's strength, he had already experienced it earlier. Although Chu Xiu had suddenly launched a sneak attack, causing him to be unable to react in time due to his hurried defense, he still did not have the confidence to block a few of Chu Xiu's moves if he were to fight head-on. So in this time, he could only keep a low profile and see what the family said. The Nine Plains Wei family was a large Guanxi family. Even a disciplinary official like Wei Juduan had to treat them politely. They were not people that Chu Xiu could casually humiliate. Chapter 266. After returning to the Jianghu government, Du Guangzhong and the others hurried over to ask, "Darren, how is it?" Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "What else can it be?" Wei Juduan had received benefits from the Nine Plains Wei clan, so naturally, I couldn't take back my prefecture capital. I could give Wei Juduan even more benefits, but the final result would only make Wei Juduan's appetite grow bigger and bigger, allowing him to reap the benefits alone. Also, it is just a prefecture government. It is temporarily in Wei Changling's hands. Who says that anyone not in charge of punishment cannot control Guanxi? Speaking of this, Chu Xiu's eyes flashed with coldness. Find some reliable people to monitor the movements of the Nine Plains Wei family. But I suspect that they will not dare to act now. The Nine Plains Wei family had been rooted in the Guanzhong torture room for so many years. They should know the rules of the Guanzhong torture room. Right now, even if Chu Xiu taught Wei Changling a lesson and humiliated the Nine Plains Wei family, the Nine Plains Wei family would not act against Chu Xiu. They would not even plot against him in secret. The reason was very simple. Chu Xiu had a great influence on him. He had just returned from Eastern Qi and gained fame and power for the Guanzhong torture room. He was the face of the Guanzhong torture room. No matter how powerful the Nine Plains Wei family was, they were just a noble family in the Guanzhong torture ground. Touching Chu Xiu was equivalent to provoking the Guanzhong torture room. That was seeking death. So Chu Xiu guessed that the Wei family would not act. If they did, they would only act after a period of time, after Chu Xiu's power had faded a little. Du Guangzhong and the others nodded. Now that Chu Xiu had returned, they only had to do as he said. Chu Xiu said, "Right, find Patriarch Luo and the others. I have something to say to them." After Du Guangzhong and the others left, they immediately looked for the Luo clan's patriarch and the others and notified them one by one. With Chu Xiu's current status in the Jianghu prefecture, He basically had the final say. Therefore, when the news of Chu Xiu's arrival spread, the Luo family patriarch and the others immediately put down everything they were doing. Even some patriarchs and sect masters who were cultivating in seclusion immediately came out to see Chu Xiu. 2 days later, everyone had gathered and were waiting obediently in the meeting hall at the entrance of the inspector hall. Seeing Chu Xiu walk in, the people of the Luo family all stood up and said respectfully in a loud voice, "Congratulations to Sir for raising the reputation of Guanzhong at the God Weapon Conference and entering the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger Roll." As he spoke, the patriarchs and sect masters present all took out congratulatory gifts and handed them to Chu Xiu. Only now did the factions of the Jianghu prefecture truly submit to Chu Xiu. The power and influence that Chu Xiu had displayed at the God Weapon Conference was something that they could never achieve in their lifetime. It could be said that the current Chu Xiu was already on a different level from them. And if he continued down this path, Chu Xiu would definitely become the Guanzhong torture room's torture officer or the head of the arrest bureau in the end. He would be an existence that truly controlled a region, and the youngest one at that. His future could be said to be limitless. Therefore, these people did not have any other thoughts. They could not wait to please Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu waved his hand and let someone take the gifts away. He said, "I appreciate everyone's intentions, but this is not a big deal. The top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger Roll is not the top 10, there is nothing to celebrate. Little Celestial Master Zhang Qingjin has occupied the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger Roll for 10 years, but I have never seen him in the Celestial Master's mansion celebrating every year." The Luo family patriarch and the others quickly complimented, "Official Chu's cultivation time is much shorter than the Little Celestial Master's. In the future, he will definitely reach the same height as the Little Celestial Master." Chu Xiu did not care about the compliments of the people present. He knew his own strength, and he did not need others to flatter him. Therefore, after taking a seat, Chu Xiu went straight to the point. "This time, I have gathered all of you here because I have something to tell you." The Luo family patriarch and the others quickly said, "Official Chu, please speak." Last time, when Chu Xiu had not gained a firm foothold, they were still hesitant. This time, however, they did not dare to hesitate at all. It was as if they would do whatever Chu Xiu said. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Everyone, the business in the Jianghu prefecture has been developing well these past few months, but the Jianghu prefecture is only so big. This is the end of the business. Have you ever thought of expanding your business to other places?" The Luo family patriarch and the others looked at each other. Of course, they had thought about it, but they were not strong enough. They were all local tyrants in the Jianghu prefecture. It was not a problem to compete in their own territory, but if they went to other places, they would be suppressed by the local forces. Only a big family like the Ninefold Wei family could cross several prefectures and have business in several places. Seeing everyone's eyes, Chu Xiu said faintly, "I know what you are worried about. It is nothing more than a lack of strength. But don't worry, I will lend some of my people to you. I don't care about normal business competition, but if the local martial arts forces want to use force to cause trouble, I will help you solve it. I only have one request. Right now, you have the cheapest source of goods in your hands, as well as detailed channels. Once you enter the other prefectures, use the fastest speed to destroy their businesses. There is only one goal. The other party can either give up on these businesses, or choose to rely on me." The Luo family patriarch and the others were stunned. What was Chu Xiu going to do? Was he crazy? Was he going to secretly control the entire Guanxi area? In the vast Guanxi area, there were actually only two forces. One was the Guanzhong torture room, and the other was the local martial arts forces like the Luo family. At present, Chu Xiu's strength in the Guanxi branch was almost at the peak. Above him was the penal officer. As long as Wei Juduan was still in power, it would not be his turn. Most of the remaining forces were the local martial arts forces. As long as Chu Xiu could completely control them, his power in the Guanxi area would be even greater than Wei Juduan's. To put it bluntly, Chu Xiu was suspected of making Wei Juduan a figurehead. Looking at everyone present, Chu Xiu said faintly, Everyone, have you made up your mind? I won't force you. If you want to leave now, you can quit. Everyone present suddenly shivered. Quit? They had already stepped into this hall. Did they still have a chance to quit? Last time in the Phoenix House, Chu Xiu had also given them a chance to quit. In the end, they could not come back after they quit. It was not that he could not return to Chu Xiu's service, but that he could not return to the human world. Therefore, under the leadership of the patriarch of the Luo family, everyone present cupped their fists and said, "We will obey official Chu's orders." Seeing everyone's attitude, Chu Xiu nodded his head in satisfaction. At this moment, Chu Xiu called Du Guangzhong and the others over. As long as they were martial artists above the physical invulnerability realm. So he picked a family to help. After listening to Chu Xiu's plan, Du Guangzhong said hesitantly, "Sir, what we're doing is actually breaking the rules. After all, every inspector has their own jurisdiction. If we go to other prefectures and touch the martial arts forces there, what will happen?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "Rules are dead, but people are alive. Inspectors cannot cross the line, but what about the criminal division?" As he said this, Chu Xiu took out his criminal division token and said, "I forgot to tell you. Now, I am not only the inspector of Guanxi, but also a 7th grade secret agent of the criminal division. I have the authority to mobilize all secret agents of the criminal division below 7th grade. I will use my identity as a member of the criminal division to ask you to cross the line and help me investigate if the martial arts forces in other prefectures have done anything illegal. Is this still against the rules?" When he said this, the eyes of Du Guangzhong and the others immediately lit up. Even the patriarch of the Luo family and the others felt more confident. The status of the criminal division was known to them. In terms of martial strength, the criminal division was far superior to the people in the punishment hall branch. Also, in terms of status, the criminal division was half a rank higher than the other constables. Now that Chu Xiu had been given the identity of a 7th grade secret agent of the criminal division by Guan Xiu, it was obvious what kind of status Chu Xiu had in Guan Xiu's eyes. "Yes, Lord." Du Guangzhong and the others bowed to Chu Xiu and were about to carry out the order. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He said to Tangya and Yen Bugui, "Both of you be careful. If the constables of the other prefectures come, remember to act appropriately. It will be troublesome if you kill someone." Chu Xiu's secondary goal was the business lifeline of the entire Guanxi. Simply put, he wanted to be the person with the strongest control over the Guanxi after Wei Juduan and not become the enemy of the entire Guanxi. If he killed the other constables in public, it would be very difficult to explain it in front of everyone. Everyone present knew their limits. Chu Xiu was just a little worried about Tangya and Yen Bugui. Although the two of them looked normal, they were the ones who would easily go crazy. Tangya raised his eyebrows and said, "I can't kill the constables, but can I kill the others?" Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "The others can do as they please." Tangya grinned and said, "Then there's no problem. It just so happens that I'm a little bored during this period." Seeing Tangya's smile, the Luo family patriarch and the others suddenly felt a chill. At this time, Tangya also looked at the Luo family patriarch and said with a smile, "Senior Luo, your Luo family's business is the largest. It just so happens that I will follow you." The Luo family patriarch quickly said, I dare not. I still have to thank Lord Tang for your help." Among the group of people under Chu Xiu, the Luo family patriarch knew Du Guangzhong and the others. After all, Du Guangzhong and the others had been constables in the Jianghu prefecture for more than 10 years. However, Tangya and the others who came from the Blue Dragon Society and joined the Guangzhong torture room later were all evil. The Luo family patriarch only hoped that this time, they did not make the wrong choice. Otherwise, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. Chapter 267. In a shop in the Chenzhou prefecture, the Luo clan's patriarch was personally in charge of expanding the Luo clan's business to the Chenzhou prefecture. In fact, he had already handed over most of the Luo family's businesses to his sons to manage. He was only responsible for the general direction and would not interfere often. However, this matter was personally ordered by Lord Chu Xiu. If it were to succeed, the Luo family's strength would definitely soar. Therefore, the patriarch of the Luo family had to personally take action. The method of invading the businesses of other prefectures was actually very simple. It was just a competition of wealth and strength. The merchant caravans that came and went smuggled some contraband goods. If the aristocratic families of the Qin province spent 100 taels of silver to buy them, I would spend 110 taels of silver. If they wanted to buy something, the Luo clan would be more than willing to pay. After all, the entire Jianghu prefecture was united. If the Luo clan didn't have something, they could get it from other clans, and the price would be lower than the clans in the Qin prefecture. With the Luo family doing this, the merchants who came and went knew that they could sell their goods at a good price here and buy good things at a low price. Therefore, in just a few days, the Luo family had completely won over 90% of the merchants who came and went. Although the Luo family earned very little by doing this, and it was even easy for them to lose money in the end, the ones who suffered the most from the smuggling business in the entire Qin State Prefecture were the local martial arts forces in the Qin State Prefecture. When they couldn't take it anymore, they would either take the initiative to admit defeat to the Luo family's patriarch, or they would have to think of other ways to deal with them. The patriarch of the Luo clan had never considered the possibility that the forces of the Qin province would join forces like the Jianghu province. The patriarch of the Luo family knew very well what these local small forces were like. 100 people had 100 hearts. The Jianghu prefecture was able to have its current prosperity thanks to Chu Xiu's strong methods. At that moment, Patriarch Luo was not the only one in the shop. Tanya was also there, playing with an exquisite dragon-tailed soul-chasing dart. He looked a little bored. He thought that he would have something to do since he was here. He didn't expect that the local martial arts forces in Jianghu prefecture were so cowardly. Not a single one of them did anything. The Luo family ancestor saw that Tanya was a bit bored, so he went over and said with a smile, "Is Sir Tang from the western Chu Shu land?" Tanya slumped lazily on the chair. He was a little surprised when he heard that. How did an old man like you know? The patriarch of the Luo family didn't care about how Tanya addressed him. Although Tanya was only in the physical invulnerability realm, he was one of Chu Xiu's trusted subordinates. Moreover, he was also an elite assassin of the Blue Dragon Society. If they really fought, he might not be a match for him. Old Ancestor Luo said with a smile, "When I was young, I had also ventured outside. The place I went to the most was Sichuan." Sir Tang must have been in the Central Plains for a long time, but he could still vaguely hear the accent of Sichuan. The land of Sichuan and Shu is filled with outstanding people. Young talents like Lord Tang are not few. Tanya casually waved his hand and said, "All right, don't flatter me. You're referring to official Chu as a young elite. What kind of young elite am I? Sichuan was a place with outstanding people and rich lands, my ass. There was miasma everywhere in the mountains and forests, which could not be compared to the Central Plains. Look at Eastern Qi. It's located in the heart of the Central Plains. It's vast and has everything you want. In Sichuan, if you want these things, you can only rely on yourself." As Tanya chatted with the patriarch of the Luo family, a disciple of the Luo family rushed in and said, "Patriarch, the Zhang family of the Jianghu prefecture is here." Tanya's eyes lit up. After waiting for so long, they're finally here. However, when Tanya rushed out and saw the people from the Zhang family, he immediately lost interest. He waved his hand and said to the patriarch of the Luo family, "You deal with it." There were more than 10 people from the Zhang family. However, the strongest one was only in the physical invulnerability realm, and he looked weak. Tanya didn't even have the interest to fight. Outside the Luo family's shop, the middle-aged man from the Zhang family looked at the patriarch of the Luo family and said in a deep voice, "The Luo family has crossed the line. This isn't the Jianghu prefecture, it's the Jianghu prefecture." The patriarch of the Luo family said indifferently, "I only know that this is Guangzhou, and everyone here is from Guangzhou. What, are you going to sell the Jianghu prefecture to the Zhang family?" There were so many aristocratic families and sects in the Jianghu prefecture, but the Zhang family was the first to jump out. Obviously, they were also pushed out to test the Luo family's intentions. Therefore, the patriarch of the Luo family didn't care. The physical invulnerability realm warrior from the Jianghu family snorted. Don't play with words. This time, the Luo family broke the rules. What do you want? The patriarch of the Luo family said indifferently, you should know who the Luo family is working for. As the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. If you know what's good for you and hand over a portion of the family's businesses, then we can all earn money together. The Luo family won't stay in the Jianghu prefecture for long. However, if you don't know what's good for you, you've seen the consequences. The Jianghu prefecture is a pile of loose sand. How can you compete with us? The physical invulnerability realm warrior from the Jianghu family's expressions suddenly changed. In fact, before he came, he had already been worried about whether the Luo family had that person behind them. After all, everyone knew that that person had absolute authority in the Jianghu prefecture. The Luo family was just a dog under that person's command. Now that this dog suddenly came out and bit people, they couldn't be sure if it was ordered by that person. Actually, it wasn't a big deal to rely on Chu Xiu. If they were in the Jianghu prefecture, they would also choose to rely on Chu Xiu. However, right now, Chu Xiu couldn't control them. What right did they have to show their filial piety to Chu Xiu? As a martial arts force in Guangzhou, it was normal for them to show their filial piety to the inspectors above them. However, they would only give these things to the patrol envoys who were in charge of them, and not to the patrol envoys of other places. No matter how famous Chu Xiu was, he could not control them. Their hands were so long. Let's talk about it when Chu Xiu becomes the disciplinary officer. The warrior from the Jianghu family understood the situation. He snorted coldly and said, "Ridiculous. I don't care who the Luo family is working for. Rules are rules. From today onwards, the Luo family's shop will disappear from the Jianghu prefecture." The patriarch of the Luo family waved his hand and said, "Beat them up." As soon as he finished speaking, dozens of warriors from the Luo family ran out of the shop and started attacking the people from the Jianghu family. The patriarch of the Luo family had expected this. If he didn't use some tricks, how could these people obediently submit to Chu Xiu? In the past, they were even a little dissatisfied with Chu Xiu. It was only because of Chu Xiu's ruthless methods that they chose to submit. Now, although Chu Xiu had both strength and fame, he was still not the penal officer. His influence was so great that the forces in other prefectures wouldn't be dissatisfied. The warriors from the Luo family were stronger than the warriors from the Jianghu family. After a quarter of an hour, the people from the Jianghu family couldn't hold on anymore and had to retreat. The people from the Jianghu family left in a sorry state. One of the disciples asked, "Master, what should we do now?" The physical invulnerability master of the Jianghu family snorted and said, "What should we do? Go and find Lord Jianghu, of course. The Jianghu family has been sending gifts to the inspector's hall all these years. Now that the Luo family has crossed the line, who will take care of it if he doesn't? If he can't take care of it, then we'll just admit defeat and give a part of our family's income to Chu Xiu in exchange for our safety." "You're an inspector. If you can't even protect your own forces and allow others to meddle, why should we give you so much?" At this moment, Jianghu happened to be in the inspector's hall of the Jianghu prefecture. He was calculating his income for this month. Jianghu was a cautious and cunning person. Previously, he only had one prefecture under his command. Among the inspectors in Guangxi, he was considered one of the weaker ones. However, he managed to take away one of Wei Hanshan's prefectures through the conflict between Wei Hanshan and Chu Xiu. His methods could be considered sharp. At this moment, his subordinate reported that the master of the Jianghu family wanted to see him. "Let him in," Jianghu said calmly. The Jianghu prefecture used to be Wei Hanshan's territory. However, after Jianghu took over, there weren't any obstacles. Guangxi had its own rules. In the past, everyone acted according to the rules. Basically, no one was like Chu Xiu, who insisted on stirring up trouble. Therefore, when Jianghu took over the Jianghu prefecture, everything went smoothly. For the local aristocratic families, it was just a change of filial piety. However, when the master of the Jiang family came in, Jiang Taoran frowned and said, "Master Jiang, who did you fight with? Why are you in such a sorry state? Although I'm the inspector of the Qinzhou prefecture, I can't intervene in the disputes between your families. I'm afraid you found the wrong person this time." Jiang Taoran thought that the master of the Jiang family had come to him because of some internal strife in the Qinzhou prefecture. However, Jiang Taoran would never agree to this. As the inspector, he was born to oppose these people. The deeper the conflicts between the aristocratic families in the prefecture, the easier it would be for him to manage. On the contrary, it would be troublesome if the aristocratic families were united. The master of the Jiang family quickly said, "It's not about the Qinzhou prefecture. It's about the Zhenzhou prefecture's Luo family and Chu Xiu. They don't follow the rules. My lord, you have to uphold justice for us this time." Then, the master of the Jiang family told Jiang Taoran everything that had happened. After hearing this, Jiang Taoran's expression immediately changed. He fiercely slammed the table and shouted, "Chu Xiu! What are you trying to do?" They had seen how Wei Juduan had deducted the reward he deserved and how the Nine Plains Wei family had provoked him. However, they had only been there to watch the show. In the end, only a few days had passed, and Chu Xiu had actually gone crazy to the point of touching his interests. What exactly was Chu Xiu trying to do? They had never provoked him. Chapter 268. In all fairness, Jiang Taoran did not want to be enemies with Chu Xiu. This was the case when Chu Xiu was still in the physical invulnerability realm and had just been appointed as an inspector. Jiang Taoran had always been a cautious person. Chu Xiu was recommended to the Guanzhong torture room by Chu Yuanxing. With Chu Yuanxing behind him, there was no reason for him to offend Chu Xiu. Therefore, he sat on the sidelines and watched the tigers fight. When Chu Xiu and Wei Hanshan were locked in a fierce battle, he secretly took action and paid a small price to get Wei Hanshan's Qinzhou prefecture from Wei Juduan. Now that Chu Xiu had reached the Three-Flower Realm and was famous in Jianghu during the God Weapon Conference, it could be said that he was the face of the Guanzhong torture room. Jiang Taoran did not want to provoke Chu Xiu at all. However, he did not want to provoke Chu Xiu. Unfortunately, Chu Xiu had come to provoke him. He did not provoke anyone, but Chu Xiu had extended his hand into his territory. How could Jiang Taoran tolerate this? If he tolerated it, his reputation in the two prefectures under his command would be completely destroyed. Therefore, Jiang Taoran coldly snorted and said, "Wait, I will take my men to check it out." With that, Jiang Taoran took his men and went straight to the Luo family's shop. At this time, when the Luo family saw that Jiang Taoran had personally appeared, the Luo family's great ancestor quickly said to Tang Ye, "Master Tang, I will leave the rest to you." The Luo family could easily make a move against the Jiang family, but against Jiang Taoran, an inspector of the Guanzhong torture room, he did not dare to make a move. Many warriors were watching in front of the Luo family's shop. Almost all of them were sent by some local martial arts forces in the Qinzhou prefecture. They had long been aware of the Luo family's actions, but they did not act rashly. Instead, they enticed the Jiang family, who were the first to lose their cool, to make a move. They wanted to see what the Luo family's confidence was, and what Chu Xiu's intentions were. Now that Jiang Taoran was here, the matter would soon be resolved. The Luo clan's patriarch chuckled as he personally went out to welcome Jiang Chen. He cupped his fists and said, "Why didn't you inform me in advance that Lord Jiang was coming? I apologize for not going out to meet you." Jiang Taoran waved his hand and said coldly, "Don't talk nonsense with me. What does Chu Xiu mean by extending his hand so far?" Of course, the Luo family patriarch wouldn't say that it was Chu Xiu's idea in public. He just smiled and said, "I'm afraid Lord Jiang has misunderstood. This has nothing to do with official Chu. Can't the Luo family do business elsewhere?" Jiang Taoran sneered and said, "Fine, fine, fine. You won't say anything, right? All right, I'll ask Chu Xiu to personally come to the Qinzhou prefecture to ask for him." As he spoke, Jiang Taoran directly barked, "Seal all the Luo clan's shops for me." I suspect that the Luo family is involved in the smuggling of contraband goods. Seize them immediately. At this moment, Tanya leisurely sauntered out from inside and said lightly, "Who said that the Luo family smuggled contraband goods? I've just finished investigating, and it's pure nonsense." Jiang Tarn narrowed his eyes as he looked at Tanya. He recognized Tanya. This person was one of Chu Xiu's trusted subordinates. In the past, he was also an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society. The Jianzhou constable came to my Qinzhou prefecture to meddle in other people's business. Does Chu Xiu not care about the rules? This is simply nonsense. Tanya said unhurriedly, "There's something I forgot to tell you, Lord Jiang. My lord has already been promoted to a 7th grade secret agent by Hall Master. I'm not here as a Jianzhou constable from the Jianzhou prefecture's patrol hall. I've received orders from official Chu of the Jianzhou prefecture's patrol hall. There's a big difference between the two. According to my investigation, there's nothing wrong with the Luo family. On the contrary, I suspect that the Zhang family might be involved in the smuggling of contraband goods. Therefore, I hope that Lord Jiang can assist in the investigation and not obstruct me." As soon as this was said, Jiang Taoran's face instantly darkened. He hadn't told anyone that Chu Xiu had actually become a secret agent of the Jianzhou prefecture's arrest hall. However, this matter was reasonable. After all, Chu Xiu had gained face for the Guanzhong torture room and made such a great contribution. Hall Master Guan wasn't as short-sighted as Wei Jieduan. He would definitely give Chu Xiu a reward that he deserved. Therefore, Tanya wouldn't lie to him about this matter. Tanya had said this in front of everyone. If he lied, Chu Xiu would also be in trouble. However, the thorny problem now was Chu Xiu's identity. In terms of the Guanzhong torture room system, the arrest hall was half a level higher than the patrol hall and torture hall branches of the various regions. It had always been the various torture hall branches cooperating with the arrest hall to investigate certain matters. The arrest hall had never cooperated with other people's investigations. Right now, Chu Xiu was using the tiger's skin as a flag. Tanya was his subordinate, but he was using his identity as a member of the arrest hall to make a fuss. Although this was just a game of words, it was in accordance with the Guanzhong torture room's rules. At this time, one of Jiang Taoran's subordinates didn't understand the situation. Everyone else was keeping a low profile as they watched the situation unfold. Only he stood out to show his loyalty. He shouted at Tanya, "How dare you? How dare you speak to Lord Jiang like this? You don't know your place." As he spoke, the physical invulnerability realm martial artist actually rushed towards Tanya, wanting to take him down to apologize to Jiang Taoran. Seeing this scene, Jiang Taoran secretly cursed him for being an idiot. Since they hadn't made a move yet, there was still room for negotiation with Chu Xiu. But once they made a move, he would definitely have to face off against Chu Xiu. Looking at the martial artist rushing towards him, the corner of Tanya's mouth curled into a disdainful sneer. After resting for such a long time, in the end, this kind of trash came to give him some exercise? It really was a little unpleasant. In the instant that the martial artist rushed forward with his sword, Tanya's figure moved. His body was like an arrow released from a bow, and in the blink of an eye, he had already appeared in front of the martial artist. 2 slender daggers appeared in his hands, and he slashed them down. The sharp blade aura directly shattered the martial artist's protective chi, causing him to hurriedly withdraw his sword in defense. But at this moment, a golden light flashed in Tanya's hand. A slender dragon tail soul hunting dart, under the control of Tanya's gang energy, had actually shot towards the martial artist's back. Being attacked from both front and back, the martial artist could only forcefully activate all the gang energy in his body to block the dragon tail soul hunting dart behind him. However, he was directly sent flying by Tanya's twin daggers, and he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. "Impudent!" Jiang Taoran roared angrily, and directly slammed his palm towards Tanya. The palm force was incomparably vigorous, and the surrounding gang energy actually had a faint suction force. Tanya's figure actually involuntarily crashed towards Jiang Taoran. Originally, Jiang Taoran didn't want to make a move, but that idiot attacked without permission, messing up Jiang Taoran's plan. Even if that martial artist was an idiot, he was still his subordinate. But now, in front of everyone, he was beaten by Tanya to the point of vomiting blood in a few moves. If he didn't make a move, where would he put his face? At this time, seeing Jiang Taran make a move, there was no fear in Tanya's eyes, and there was even a faint hint of excitement. Assassins from the Blue Dragon Society were all elites among those of the same level. When Tanya was in the physical invulnerability realm, there was almost no one in the same level who could match him. When carrying out a mission, it was very common for him to fight one against many. Of course, it was only a few people, and it was not abnormal like Chu Xiu, who could fight 1 against 100. However, Tanya had never fought against a martial artist in the Three-Flower realm, and now he wanted to give it a try. Facing Jiang Taran's palm, more than 10 golden lights flashed around Tanya's body, and at the same time, more than 10 dragon-tail soul-hunting darts shot out. However, strangely, they didn't shoot straight towards Jiang Taoran. Instead, they flew all over the sky with the support of gang energy, like a large net, piercing towards Jiang Taoran's major acupoints. Jiang Taoran coldly snorted. After all, he was a martial artist in the Three-Flower realm, and the density of his gang energy was far beyond Tang Ye's imagination. As he slapped with both palms, he directly blasted away all of Tang Ye's dragon-tail soul-hunting dart with his own powerful gang energy. However, at this time, Tang Ye's figure fluttered like willow catkins. It was very strange. As his figure danced, countless silver needles scattered around him, like pear blossoms in a storm. There was no end to them. Jiang Taoran was also shocked by this scene. Could it be that this person was carrying some kind of hidden weapon with him? If he shot out so many hidden weapons with gang energy, just how terrifying was this person's control of gang energy? All of you break! Jiang Taoran roared angrily. He put his palms together and slowly pushed them out. It seemed clumsy, but his gang energy was as indestructible as a mountain. Although the silver needles were densely packed, they were all bounced away wherever he passed. However, at this moment, a dazzling golden light bloomed in Tanya's hands. The hilts of the 2 short knives in his hands connected, forming something like a moon. It shone with an incomparable sharpness as it slashed toward Jiang Taoran. It was an extremely sharp force without any impurities. It was a sharp force formed by condensing and compressing gang energy to the extreme. Someone had once told Tanya that the path of hidden weapons took a strange path. However, those who were able to cultivate this path to great success would be able to interweave the truth and strangeness. They would be upright and above board. When a hidden weapon was shot out, the opponent could only take it head-on. Just like this saber strike of his, Tanya had practically treated himself as a hidden weapon and blasted it out. Even Jiang Taoran was shocked by the sharpness of that moment. He immediately erupted all his gang energy. His hand formed a fist seal, and the gang energy in front of him instantly became incomparably viscous. Tanya's knife was placed horizontally in the middle, stagnant, but it was already less than a foot away from Jiang Taoran. With a loud bang, Jiang Taoran's gang energy was shattered. Tanya's 2 short knives were directly blasted away. His figure also rapidly retreated, his face slightly pale. Jiang Taoran, who stood opposite him, although his expression was normal, was extremely gloomy. Just now, he had used all his strength to block Tanya's knife. If he had relaxed even a little, it was very likely that he would have been injured just now. In terms of status and strength, Tanya was a junior, but in the end, he did not gain the slightest advantage in the hands of this junior. What kind of monsters were Chu Xiu's subordinates? Good. Very good. Chu Xiu has broken the rules. I won't talk nonsense with a junior like you. When the time comes, I will personally find Chu Xiu and explain it to him. After saying that, Jiang Taoran directly led his people away. Behind him, Tanya revealed a trace of a smile, but that smile was filled with disdain. Chapter 269. Jiang Taoran returned in defeat from the Qin state government. The same thing happened in the other state governments. The sects and aristocratic families of the Jianghu government and Chu Xiu's subordinates acted to deal with the local martial arts factions. As long as the local inspectors came out to stop them, Chu Xiu's subordinates would bring up the identity of a member of the criminal division. It had to be said that Chu Xiu's identity as a member of the Criminal Investigations Division was quite useful, at least in terms of the rules. Although everyone knew that Chu Xiu was deliberately looking for trouble by extending his reach so far, this was still in line with the rules. Therefore, after such a thing happened, Jiang Taoren sent a message to the other inspectors, preparing to discuss this matter. In the meeting hall of the Qin state government, Fang Hua, Situ Xing, Jiang Taoren, Wei Changling and Yang Ling gathered. Situ Xing snorted. Lawless. This was simply lawless. Who does Chu Xiu think he is? Does he really think that just because he has some fame outside and made some contributions to the hall chief, he can be unbridled? Situ Xing and Fang Hua were the angriest. In terms of strength, they were at the 5 energies returning to the origin realm and were stronger than Chu Xiu. In terms of experience, they were veterans of the Guanzhong torture room and had been in Guanxi longer than Wei Juduan. Previously, Chu Xiu had made these contributions for the Guanzhong torture room and they had been very polite to Chu Xiu. But they had not expected Chu Xiu to take advantage of them and stretch his hand so far that it was already at their doorstep. Wei Changling sat at the side and sneered. Chu Xiu is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant, a very impetuous person. Right now, he is just an inspector and is so arrogant after making some contributions. When his foundation in Guanxi deepens, I fear that he will be riding on our necks. At this time, Wei Changling was very happy. Last time, he had been humiliated by Chu Xiu in front of the Guanxi branch. None of these people had stood up to help him. They had all silently watched the show. But now, Chu Xiu is also bullying you. This time, I want to see what you can do. Jiang Taoren snorted and said, now that Chu Xiu has already done it, what's the use of scolding him here? Most importantly, he has the identity of a member of the criminal division. If we make a move on him, we'll be seen as breaking the rules. At this point, Jiang Taoren and the others felt aggrieved. It was Chu Xiu who had broken the rules and stretched his hand so far. In the end, they couldn't do anything about it. Sometimes, the rules of the Guanzhong torture room were something that even the inspectors could not help but criticize in their hearts. They were all from the Guanzhong torture room, and their strength was the same. Why was the status of the narcotics department higher than theirs by half a rank? Their treatment was also better? Of course, they had neglected one point. The narcotics department was involved in the business of killing people, while they were only responsible for stabilizing the forces in their respective jurisdictions. At this time, Fang Hua suddenly turned his gaze to Yang Ling, who had not spoken, and said, Yang Ling, now you and I are both inspectors. What Chu Xiu did is also our interests. You are Wei Daren's adopted son. Why don't you report this matter to Wei Daren and let him punish Chu Xiu? Hearing this, Yang Ling sneered in his heart. Fang Hua, this old fellow, really thought that he was an idiot. He wanted him to be the first to act? Not to mention that he would not report this matter to Wei Juduan. Yang Ling would record every word they said here today and have someone send it to Chu Xiu. Facing everyone's gaze, Yang Ling spread his hands helplessly and said, Everyone, don't look at me like this. Don't you know Yifu's character? If Chu Xiu touches Yifu's interests, then Yifu will take care of it. But now, this is an internal matter of us inspectors. Do you think Yifu will stand on our side? Also, Chu Xiu has just gained face for our Guanzhong torture room in Jianghu. He can be said to have come with great momentum. Even Yifu is not willing to offend Chu Xiu right now. You all saw what happened to Wei Daren at the gates of the torture hall branch a few days ago. Did Yifu act? He did not even show his face. I do not want to touch Yifu's bad luck. If you want to go, then go. In any case, I will not go. As he spoke, Yang Ling spread his hands and put on an expression of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. On the other side, Wei Changling's face darkened. The most embarrassing thing in his life was being humiliated by Chu Xiu in front of everyone. But now, Yang Ling mentioned it again in front of him. Fang Hua frowned and said, This won't do and that won't do. Are we just going to let Chu Xiu touch our interests? At the side, Jiang Taran gritted his teeth and said, "Of course not. Even Wei Juduan has to follow the rules. What right does Chu Xiu have to do? Let's all go to the Jianghu government together. At worst, we will make a big fuss. I want to see if Wei Daran will care after this matter is made big." Everyone present nodded. Now that things had come to this, they could only do this. Yang Ling also nodded his head, but there was a trace of mysteriousness in his eyes. After everyone had dispersed, he immediately wrote down everything that everyone had said and arranged for people to quickly send it to the Jianghu government. Not mentioning that Chu Xiu still had a handle on him, he now understood that following Chu Xiu would definitely have a better future than Wei Juduan. Wei Juduan was already old. After he retired, the tea would cool after he left. How many benefits could he give him? On the other hand, Chu Xiu was like the sun in the sky right now. The Guanzhong torture room looked at ability and qualifications, but the most important thing was still strength. Right now, Chu Xiu was already in the top 10 of the Longhu roll. How far could Chu Xiu go in the future? In any case, from Yang Ling's point of view, Chu Xiu's future achievements would definitely far surpass Wei Juduan and everyone present. Since that was the case, he would definitely stand on Chu Xiu's side wholeheartedly. What was the point of messing around with this group of short-sighted people? In the Jianghu government, Chu Xiu immediately received the news from Yang Ling. He smiled and directly crushed the secret letter with his true qi. He could almost guess the reaction of these people. Although they were all angry, they did not want to fall out with him. Since that was the case, it would be much easier to handle. The next day, Jiang Taoran and the other 4 people came to the door aggressively, causing the Jianghu constables who were guarding the door of the Jianghu government to shiver. Chu Xiu laughed and walked out, saying, "You guys are so busy. How do you have the time to stroll around my Jianghu government today?" Jiang Taoran said coldly, "Chu Xiu, don't you know why we are here? You have reached so far. This time, you have broken the rules of our Guangxi region." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, Master Jiang. Come in and talk. Standing at the door and letting people watch is beneath your dignity." When Jiang Taoran and the others saw Chu Xiu's indifferent appearance as if nothing had happened, they were also angry in their hearts. However, they did not want to fall out with Chu Xiu here, so they did not say much. After inviting everyone into a meeting hall, Chu Xiu slowly asked his men to serve tea. After taking a sip of tea, he said slowly, "You guys are angry because I asked the aristocratic families of the Jianghu government to steal business from other state capitals?" Fang Hua snorted and said, "You still know? Chu Xiu, from the time you entered the Guangxi region, I have not provoked you. But now you have reached so far and touched our interests. What do you mean by this? Do you really think you can be lawless because you made a contribution to the Guanzhong torture room and left an impression on the hall chief?" Chu Xiu glanced at Wei Changling and said coolly, "I do not mean that. But official Fang, you should know that nothing in this world is absolutely fair. You also said that I, Chu Xiu, fought outside and made meritorious service for the Guanzhong torture hall, but in the end, someone stole what should have belonged to me. Tell me, who should I go to seek justice?" Wei Changling's expression darkened. Chu Xiu's words were clearly directed at him. Wei Changling snorted coldly and slapped the table. "Chu Xiu, it was official Wei's order to appoint me as the inspector. If you do not accept it, go reason with official Wei. Why are you pointing at me in such a strange way?" Chu Xiu looked coldly at Wei Changling. His eyes were like deep pools. In a flash, the power of the soul-moving art was unleashed and pulled in Wei Changling's mental power. With Wei Changling's present strength, he could not stop Chu Xiu's soul-moving art. In his mind, countless ghosts leapt at him and tore at his body. The pain was so real that Wei Changling grunted and broke out in a cold sweat. Right now, Jiang Taoran and the others were working together to threaten Chu Xiu. They could not watch as Chu Xiu was so arrogant. The strongest, Fang Hua and Sidu Xing, released their powerful energies and shouted at Chu Xiu, "Chu Xiu, what do you want to do? If you want to fight, we will keep you company." Their energies exploded. If Chu Xiu did not stop, the two of them would definitely stop him. Seeing the two interfere, Chu Xiu withdrew his soul-moving art. But Wei Changling seemed to have been fished out of the water. His head was covered in cold sweat and his gaze at Chu Xiu was filled with terror. Last time, when he had vomited blood from Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel seal, he knew he was not a match for Chu Xiu. In a head-on fight he would not be able to block a few moves from Chu Xiu. Now, he knew he had overestimated himself last time. In a head-on fight, he could not even block one move from Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu slowly picked up a teacup and took a sip before saying, "I do not want to fight. I just want to teach this idiot a lesson, tell him what is reverence. Do not think that just because you and I are inspectors, you qualify to be on equal footing with me. Back at the God Weapon Conference, I killed more than 1 or 2 three-flower realm martial practitioners. With your strength, you dare to slap the table and shout at me. Are you worthy?" Chapter 270. Chu Xiu's sudden attack caused Fang Hua and Sidu Xing's eyes to be filled with a look of fear. On one hand, they were afraid of Chu Xiu's arrogant and temperamental attitude. At the same time, they were also afraid of Chu Xiu's strength. The two of them were veteran practitioners of the 5 Qis unifying to the origin realm. Having stayed in the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall for such a long time, they had accumulated some experience. However, Chu Xiu's mysterious great technique of extinguishing the heavens and destroying the earth and soul shifting had left a deep impression on them. The moment they saw Chu Xiu's attack, they wondered if they could block Chu Xiu's move if they were in his place. Both Sidu Xing and Fang Hua were somewhat uncertain about this. In the past, Sidu Xing and Fang Hua didn't have any understanding of the top 10 martial artists on the Longhu list. After all, they rarely came out of their seclusion. But now, they could be considered to have seen it for themselves. For an existence at the level of Chu Xiu, it didn't seem difficult to kill someone at a higher level. In particular, the gap between the 3-flower realm and the 5 Qis toward the origin stage wasn't that big. At least, it was much smaller than the gap between the physical invulnerability stage and the 3-flower realm. At this time, Yang Ling stood up to smooth things over and said, "Everyone, we're all here to discuss things. Why do you have to be so hostile? It's not good for anyone, isn't it?" Hearing Yang Ling's words, Fang Hua and Sidu Xing seemed to have found a way out. They snorted coldly and sat back down. Jiang Taoren seemed to have been shocked by Chu Xiu's attack just now. His tone softened a little as he said, "Lord Chu, just like what Yang Ling said just now, we came here with the attitude of discussing things. What exactly do you intend to do this time? Although you haven't been in the Guanxi area for long, you should know the rules here. What you're doing now is obviously breaking the rules. I'm afraid it's a little inappropriate to oppose us for a little profit." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Everyone, you keep saying that I've affected your interests. In that case, I'd like to ask, how much did the martial arts influences under your jurisdiction give you? Was it as much as my Jianghu prefecture?" Everyone present looked at each other. Jiang Taoren said a little awkwardly, "Well, of course not. After all, we don't have official Chu's means." Currently, in the entire Guanxi region, apart from the prefectures under Chu Xiu who completely obeyed his orders and the martial arts factions under him who did not dare to be disloyal, the other martial arts factions in the prefectures and prefectures actually appeared to be in harmony with the local patrol hall. To put it simply, they would give a certain amount of filial piety to the inspector hall every month. At the same time, the inspector hall had to turn a blind eye to their smuggling of contraband. Sometimes, they even had to provide some convenience for them. In general, as long as these inspectors were not as stubborn as Chu Xiu's predecessor, Fang Jingyuan, they were living a good life. Of course, they couldn't be compared with Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had directly received a share of the profits from the local martial arts influences in Jianghu Prefecture. In Jianghu Prefecture, his words were absolute. This made the other patrol envoys very jealous. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Everyone, I have indeed interfered in the affairs of other prefectures. However, I did not interfere in the affairs of your patrol hall. Instead, I interfered in the business of the local pugilistic world. You said that I took away your profits, but what if I can guarantee that you get more profits? Jiang Taoran frowned and said, What do you mean? Chu Xiu said lightly, What I mean is very simple. You don't have to accept the filial piety of the local martial arts forces in the state governments under your command. Just pretend that you can't do anything to me. As long as you don't intervene, those martial arts forces will be at my mercy. Of course, I wouldn't go overboard. Whatever I did in the Jianghu prefecture, they would do the same over there. Similarly, they would have to give me a portion of their respective smuggling businesses. As for the part they give me, I won't take it for myself. We'll split it evenly. Chu Xiu pointed to himself and said, I'll take 60% and you take 40%. Jiang Taoran's eyes widened when he heard that. How could he do that? In fact, Chu Xiu's move was very simple. Didn't these local martial arts forces think that Chu Xiu couldn't do anything to them because of the rules of Guanxi? Well, let the inspectors behind them admit defeat first and take the lead. In this way, how many people would have the guts to be stubborn? This was like a story from Chu Xiu's previous life. When a local official wanted to collect taxes, he would first join forces with the local gentry. Only when the gentry paid the taxes honestly would the other people follow suit. After that, the gentry would return the money in full. The money of the people would be divided 30% to 70%. The gentry would get 70% and the local official would get 30%. Of course, when it came to Chu Xiu, the rules had to be changed. He would get the bigger share and the others would get the smaller share. However, Chu Xiu was quite kind. He would get 60% and the others would get 40%. However, even this 40% was more than what the martial arts forces had given them in the past. Looking at the people present, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, Everyone, you said that I've affected your interests. Now, not only have I not affected your interests, but I can also increase your interests. You don't want to fall out and I don't want to either. So I have put the solution in front of you. Tell me, do you agree or not? The people present had conflicted expressions. Of course, Wei Changling would never agree. His identity as the Guanxi inspector was secondary. His main identity was a member of the Zhuyuan Wei family. He had to consider the interests of the Zhuyuan Wei family first. But just now he had experienced Chu Xiu's power, so he did not dare to speak now. Jiang Taoran and the others had thoughtful expressions. While Chu Xiu's words sounded nice and they would receive more benefits than before, it was not as if they did not pay anything. According to Chu Xiu, the price they had to pay was very simple, and that was prestige. By doing so, it was equivalent to them taking the initiative to admit defeat in front of Chu Xiu and no longer caring about the local martial arts forces. In this way, Chu Xiu's power in the Guanxi region would definitely increase greatly, but their reputation in the local martial arts forces would at least be below Chu Xiu's. If they did not agree, they would have to fall out with Chu Xiu. If they agreed, while they could gain benefits, they would also lose a part of their reputation. This was really a difficult choice. But at this moment, Yang Ling suddenly stood up and said, I agree to official Chu's conditions. Jiang Taoran and the rest looked at Yang Ling with surprise on their faces. There was also some anger on their faces. Before they came, everyone had agreed that they would advance and retreat together. But now, Yang Ling suddenly changed his mind and was the first to agree. What did he mean? Facing everyone's gaze, Yang Ling smiled bitterly and said, Everyone, it has been a long time since we joined the Guanzhong torture room. All these years, even if we don't have any merits, we have worked hard. However, everyone knows about the salary of the torture chamber. It is really a little pitiful. So to be honest, as inspectors, we must definitely put money first. You are not afraid, but I am still in the physical invulnerability realm. If I don't prepare more resources, how will I break through to the three-flower realm? You all know my godfather's character. I won't be able to get any cultivation resources from him, so now I can only think of a way. Official Chu is the #1 person in the younger generation of the Guanzhong torture room. He also represents the Guanzhong torture room in the martial arts world. He is now ranked 6th in Longhu. It is not embarrassing to admit defeat in front of such a person. I, Yang Ling, don't care about a little reputation. The key is to get the benefits first. So, everyone, I'm sorry. Regardless of whether you agree or not, I am ready to agree. Yang Ling's words also made Jiang Taoran and the others fall into deep thought. Just as Yang Ling said, while they were still in the Guanzhong torture room plotting for a little profit, Chu Xiu had already made a name for himself in the martial arts world. Moreover, with Chu Xiu's current age and strength, it was certain that he would be in a high position in the future. At the very least, his progress would be much faster than theirs. At that time, they might still be inspectors, but Chu Xiu would already be a torture officer or the head of the criminal division. With benefits in front of them, why should they offend Chu Xiu for a little worthless reputation? After thinking it through, Jiang Taoran gritted his teeth and said, "Official Chu, I am also willing to agree to your conditions." Anyway, he admitted that he was not as good as Chu Xiu. Moreover, the benefits that Chu Xiu gave him did not make him suffer a loss. Therefore, Jiang Taoran also smoothly agreed. Seeing that 2 of the 5 people had already agreed, Fang Hua and Sidu Xing looked at each other and sighed. We also agree to official Chu's conditions. Fang Hua and Sidu Xing's age was not considered old, but they were not considered young either. They had already passed the prime of their life. In this lifetime, they should not be able to step into the realm of the unity of man and nature. As long as Chu Xiu did not die and did not die prematurely, it was almost certain that he would step into the realm of the unity of man and nature in the future. Although they were not considered old now, in front of people like Chu Xiu, they were already considered old. Since Jiang Taoran and Yang Ling had already agreed, what else could they insist on? They did not want to save up a lot of money, but in the end, they would not have the life to spend it. Just like their colleague, Kai Jingsheng, who had been running around for most of his life. When he was young, he was even more desperate. He even joined the criminal division as a secret agent for a period of time. What was the result? In the end, he still ended up with a serious injury. In the end, he sold off all the money he had accumulated over the years to find the divine doctor of the Jianghu, Anger Yama, Feng Buping, to treat him. Seeing 4 of the 5 people agree, Wei Chongling was dumbfounded. What was he supposed to say? But Chu Xiu did not intend to waste words with Wei Chongling. He said coldly, "Wei Chongling, you do not need to agree or disagree. You can choose to spread what I said today to other Jianghu forces. This is all up to you. But at that time, you will be touching the interests of the entire Guanxi branch. I fear that I do not need to act. The people present will make sure that you have no place in the Guanxi branch." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.